So that was supposed to be part of the curriculum. And no, Florida has pretty much stripped that out now. 3 members of this task force are pointing out now and complaining that what Ron DeSantis did is he actually created a quote, work group that was stacked with DeSantis's, people and bigots friendly to DeSantis. And they rewrote the curriculum without ever informing the African American History Task Force, and then put it into law without asking their opinions or anything. Dr. Donna Austin, who is a member of the actual African American History Task Force in the state of Florida, said it's the same divide techniques that they used on the plantation. It's the same identical thing. They always use methods of dividing the African and African American people. That's what they do. Apparently, some of the members on DeSantis's hand-picked task force are also black. For example, this is a quote from Social Studies 2023 standards. Quote, examine the various duties and trades performed by slaves like agricultural work, painting, carpentry, tailoring, domestic service, blacksmithing, and transportation. Instruction includes how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. End of quote. This rather flipped out these people. Another was, famed abolitionist Frederick Douglass was inspired by his mistress to read while enslaved. That small glimmer of light was enough to inspire him to turn it into a burning flame of illumination from which he benefited and his country benefited. Oh, isn't that nice? His slave mistress taught him how to read. Shouldn't we be all so grateful that he was enslaved and therefore, this is gaslighting. And Kamala Harris went down to Florida last week and called it out. She said this is misleading. She said they insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it. This was at the social action luncheon of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority down in Florida, which I believe is a black sorority. State Senator Geraldine Thompson said in a statement to the Daily Beast, she said, this focus is totally missing from the newly adopted, she said, Florida statute requires that instruction be provided on African civilization before colonization and slavery. This focus is totally missing from the newly adopted standards. The standards should not advance the misconception that our history as a people began with slavery and not with one of the most advanced civilizations in the world. End of quote. Now, she's a member of the task force, but she had nothing to do with, the history task force. It had nothing to do with the new standards because, again, that was the working group. She said this whitewashes the brutality that occurred when families were separated by being sold off during slavery and the resulting long-term trauma still experienced by current generations. So that was supposed to be part of the curriculum. And no, Florida has pretty much stripped that out now. 3 members of this task force are pointing out now and complaining that what Ron DeSantis did is he actually created a quote, work group that was stacked with DeSantis's, people and bigots friendly to DeSantis. And they rewrote the curriculum without ever informing the African American History Task Force, and then put it into law without asking their opinions or anything. Dr. Donna Austin, who is a member of the actual African American History Task Force in the state of Florida, said it's the same divide techniques that they used on the plantation. It's the same identical thing. They always use methods of dividing the African and African American people. That's what they do. Apparently, some of the members on DeSantis's hand-picked task force are also black. For example, this is a quote from Social Studies 2023 standards. Quote, examine the various duties and trades performed by slaves like agricultural work, painting, carpentry, tailoring, domestic service, blacksmithing, and transportation. Instruction includes how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. End of quote. This rather flipped out these people. Another was, famed abolitionist Frederick Douglass was inspired by his mistress to read while enslaved. That small glimmer of light was enough to inspire him to turn it into a burning flame of illumination from which he benefited and his country benefited. Oh, isn't that nice? His slave mistress taught him how to read. Shouldn't we be all so grateful that he was enslaved and therefore, this is gaslighting. And Kamala Harris went down to Florida last week and called it out. She said this is misleading. She said they insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it. This was at the social action luncheon of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority down in Florida, which I believe is a black sorority. State Senator Geraldine Thompson said in a statement to the Daily Beast, she said, this focus is totally missing from the newly adopted, she said, Florida statute requires that instruction be provided on African civilization before colonization and slavery. This focus is totally missing from the newly adopted standards. The standards should not advance the misconception that our history as a people began with slavery and not with one of the most advanced civilizations in the world. End of quote. Now, she's a member of the task force, but she had nothing to do with, the history task force. It had nothing to do with the new standards because, again, that was the working group. She said this whitewashes the brutality that occurred when families were separated by being sold off during slavery and the resulting long-term trauma still experienced by current generations. So that was supposed to be part of the curriculum. And no, Florida has pretty much stripped that out now. 3 members of this task force are pointing out now and complaining that what Ron DeSantis did is he actually created a quote, work group that was stacked with DeSantis's, people and bigots friendly to DeSantis. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. Hey there, it's Giving Tuesday. This is kind of a national holiday for nonprofits. Giving Tuesday, the day that people can step up and select their favorite charity and make a contribution. And so I'd like to ask you to consider making a contribution to Free Speech TV. It is a nonprofit organization. It does great work. You can just call 877-378-8669, or you can go to freespeech.org. We're particularly, trying to sign up people to become monthly donors, to become sustaining members, people who, on a regular basis, every single month, you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they'll just charge it every month. Free Speech TV is just such an incredible gem. And while you're doing that, while you're going to freespeech.org and while you're calling 877-378-8669 and making your contribution, I wanted to play for you the first roughly 3 minutes of John Kennedy's his inaugural address on January 20th, 1961. Here it is.
We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
That was a time when we very much were committed to the success of liberty in this country. We now have a movement in America, you know, the MAGA movement, that is absolutely opposed to liberty and obsessed with fascism, with violence, with hate, with anger. And here on Free Speech TV, this network that you can contribute to right now on Giving Tuesday, 877-378-8669, right here, we're pushing back. We are holding that torch that John Kennedy handed to us and saying, no, we are the advocates of freedom, the holders of liberty, the supporters of liberty. We are the believers in democracy, and we will fight for democracy, and we will support democracy. And so I'm asking you today on Giving Tuesday to support this great voice of democracy that is Free Speech TV and all the wonderful people who are on this network every single day, sharing with you, and working very hard to do it, by the way, sharing with you their thoughts, their opinions, what they've learned, their wisdom, in order to not just edify you, not just to elevate you and inform you and help you win the water cooler wars and all that, but to help us to reclaim that vision of liberty that we seem to have lost since the Reagan Revolution. We kind of gave it up to, well, just let the big corporations and the billionaires run everything and everything will be just fine. We've discovered that promise of Ronald Reagan was a lie, and it just devastated the American people. So today on Giving Tuesday, please call 877-378-8669 or go to Free Speech and become a regular monthly contributor. Thank you so much for watching and for your support.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We walk on starry fields of white and do not see the daisies. For blessings come in our sight, we rarely offer praises. We sigh for some supreme delight to crown our lives with splendor and quite ignore our daily store of pleasures, sweet and tender. Our cares are bold and push their way upon our thought and feeling. They hand about us all the day, our time from pleasure stealing. So unobtrusive, many a joy, we pass by and forget it. But worry strives to own our lives and conquers if we let it. There's not a day in all the year, but holds some hidden pleasure. And looking back, joys oft appear to brim the past's wide measure. But blessings are like friends I hold, who love and labor near us. We ought to raise our notes of praise while living hearts can hear us. Full many a blessing wears the guise of worry or of trouble. Far-seeing is the soul, and wise who knows the mask is double. But they who have the faith and strength to thank their God for sorrow has found a joy without alloy to gladden every morrow. We ought to make the moment's notes of happy, glad Thanksgiving. The hours and days, the silent phrase of music we are living. And so the theme should swell and grow as weeks and months pass o'er us and rise sublime at this good time, a grand Thanksgiving chorus. The poet is Ella Wheeler Wilcox. The poem is Thanksgiving, about 120 years ago. Gratitude makes us stronger. Not the receiving of it, but the feeling and the expressing and the giving of it. It improves sleep and health and productivity and more. That's not me talking, it's science. Shout out to the folks at superthank.org. And there are things great and small to be thankful for every single day. We walk on starry fields of white and do not see the daisies. With what's happening every day in the world, gratitude can be hard. That is why it is more important. This coming day and weekend, let's make a grand Thanksgiving chorus, or even a cacophony. Let's find gratitude. Let's raise our notes of praise while living hearts can hear us, and maybe make a habit of it. I'm Jefferson Smith. What are you grateful for? 202-808-9925. This is the Thom Hartmann Show. It's Tuesday News Day, just before Thanksgiving holiday. What do you want to talk about with your family this coming weekend, or with your friends, or with your cat or your dog, or screaming into the universe? What's a story we need to be tracking? This is the Thom Hartmann Show, 202-808-9925. Happy almost Thanksgiving. Couple updates. We spent a bunch of time talking about artificial intelligence, trying to find that space between alarmism and avoidance, trying to find a space that includes leading in without merely rooting on, without scrutiny or regulation, trying to figure out how to contend with, without being merely shouters of a sky that might or might not be falling. A little bit of the facts. And I tried to say this yesterday, but I want to make sure this landed, or that it lands now. To me, this is not a story about Sam Altman. He actually seems a really effective CEO, and actually kind of a neat person. I've never met the guy. I have no particular mechanism by which to evaluate. But this is not a knock on that guy. This is a guy who had 600 of his employees who said they wanted to leave after he left. I mean, heck, I've never happened to me before. That is impressive. And it occurred to me last night, and it underscores the point, to be clear. What if everybody in this scenario, what if everybody acted reasonably, even more than reasonably? What if folks played the role that we would expect them, and in certain circles, people might want them or would expect them to play? What if folks served their appropriate functions, and still we risk a bad result? Altman leads a company, pushes hard to move fast and commercialize, because that is his job. And he knows that other companies, Google especially, will be moving quickly and commercializing, and he doesn't want to fall behind. The 501c3 board, who was organized and organized the organization was realizing, hey, listen, yeah, we're going to have a commercial arm and a nonprofit arm, but the reason the nonprofit arm is supposed to oversee the commercial arm is to make sure the commercial arm doesn't do something really bad or doesn't empower technology that does something bad that moves beyond their control. And so what if they do the thing that is what you'd kind of want and expect them to do, which is try to hold that CEO accountable? They're worried about the speed before the risks are known and sufficient checks are put in place, and the 501c3 board removes him. And then Microsoft does what Microsoft would be expected to do, what its shareholders would expect them to do, what their employees would expect them to do, what the watchers on CNBC Business would expect them to do. They call up and say, hey, what's going on? We invested a lot of money in this. What the heck are you doing? And when they don't get precisely the answer they want, they say, Sam Altman, why don't you come and work for us? And bring your president with you. And bring maybe a bunch of other people. The people at OpenAI who aren't worried about rapid commercialization, come with you. Because, hey, as Microsoft, we are not a nonprofit. We are not a charity. We are not a 501c3 organization. We are built for the purpose of commercialization. And wouldn't we like to commercialize faster than Google or anybody else in the world? And they do the thing they'd be expected to do. And then the employees, they want to win. And they like their boss. And they want the financial benefits of winning. And they want the financial benefits and the stock options and the salaries and the bonuses and the benefits for their company winning. Beating Google, beating any other company. And they also don't like the financial hit by the profiles of what's been happening and by the risks that are being presented. And so they push for reinstatement and they push for the board to resign. And people, you can imagine why they would do that. So my point is, and this is part of the, I'm going to call it a sin, I'm going to call it the failing, I'm going to call it the structural defect of modern media, that it tries to make the story about some dum-dum. Maybe that dum-dum is Dan Quayle, maybe that dum-dum is Ronald Reagan, maybe that dum-dum is Donald Trump, maybe that dum-dum is the 501c3 board or the employees or Microsoft or Sam Altman. Some particular individual scoundrel. But what if nobody was being a scoundrel? What if people were operating under the function that, in a way that would be expected? And that's when we learn what we need to learn, that that is insufficient. That relying on people merely to serve their function is insufficient. What if that's the case? That what if trying to manage the development of a critical, promising, and dangerous technology is insufficient for a single charity to do? What if it is insufficient for a single well-meaning CEO or even 600 employees to do? What if it requires standards? What if it requires something beyond rational utility maximization? What if, in fact, selfishness at scale does not solve this problem, does not check what needs to be checked? What if a strong charity isn't enough? Well, that's not the first time this has been true. It is true of pollution. It is true of poverty. It is true of pandemics. It is true of international relations. It is true of war. That selfishness at scale does not yield the public interest. The private interest multiplied by many is not the same as the collective good. That's why we need a collective mechanism to figure things out. To me, this story is not about artificial intelligence. It's not about iRobot. It's not about Isaac Asimov. It's not about Sam Altman. It's not about Microsoft. Of course, it's about all those things. But it does shine a light on where we are in terms of governance in our country. Where we are in terms of our common commitment to solve problems together. Our pledge to democracy, our pledge to the idea that we are stronger together and can solve problems together better than we can apart. And if we merely rely on well-meaning, appropriate, function-filling, low-key selfishness, maybe everything just doesn't work out perfectly. And of course it doesn't. We know that. Even Peter Thiel knows that. He would just like it not to be so. Even Elon Musk knows that, even though he would like it not to be so, or at least not when it interferes with what he wants to do. And if you have billions and billions and billions of dollars, you can hire lots of communications mechanisms to try to convince lots of people of the big lie of the 20th century. And the big lie of the 20th century was, in fact, the sum of the self-interest yields the public interest. That's the big lie. The bigger lie than January 6th. And that's the lie that we have to counter. We don't have to yell, the sky is falling. We just have to say there's a sky and an earth, and we got to figure this out together. Any of us thinks that they should be the king and the lord of everything, they're wrong. And that's why we fought a revolution. If you want to give thanks for something, give thanks for democracy. Call number here is 202-808-9925. What are you grateful for? This is the Thom Hartmann Show. I'm Jefferson Smith. It's also Tuesday News Day. And we will go over today what do you want to talk about with your families, your friends, your neighbors, on the social media platform of your choice. What do you want to shout into the wind this holiday season? How do you want to approach it? I'm fascinated by that. I come from a mixed extended family that I love dearly. My grandparents on both sides were dyed-in-the-wool Republicans. My dad's side of the family described FDR as that man. They wouldn't even say his name, weren't even allowed to say his name. And so we have a mixture of strategies, including avoidance, including finding common ground, including focusing on things where we share love and kindness. Then occasional disagreement. And I try to deal with it somewhat rationally, but also somewhat compassionately. Interested in how you handle it. And we have some thoughts. We'll have a guest later who's going to talk about some of the topics. I also have a weird one. I want to express gratitude for Joe Biden. I'll explain why. I'll make my case. And I'll make my case for the way I like to bring up a cocktail party conversation that I've liked to do. And I do on my porch. I have this heated porch. It's nice in the winter, nice in the fall, nice in the spring. Doesn't need to be heated in the summer. This is my porch conversation about Joe Biden. I'll share it with you in a little bit. This is Thom Hartmann Show. This is your show. I'm Jeff. Honored to sit in. 202-808-9925.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program. 202-808-9925. We'll be with you in a moment. Ziggy, you're on the air from Oneonta, New York.
That's right, and you said it properly. Very good.
I had help.
I'm grateful that I'm not a misguided maggot. But my first thing I want to do is
All right, go on.
Yeah, I want to wish George Bailey a happy Thanksgiving.
George Bailey is here. I don't know where. He's right over there.
Good.
He's out of reach, so I can't bring him onto camera. And he's an excellent radio dog, but not because he is verbose. He's a good radio dog because he tends to stay quiet unless the mailman comes, and the mailman doesn't know we're here, and he doesn't know where the mailman is, so he will stay quiet for a little bit.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Oh, I love dogs, so I'm glad you bring him in all the time. Hey, last night I heard an attorney with a suggestion or a comment that the gag orders that they're trying to do on Trump, they're not necessary. All the judge has to do is revoke his bond. And on dozens and hundreds, all the other people would have had theirs revoked already.
Yep.
And there is no freedom of speech clause in the bond because he subrogated his
by signing the bond.
Amendment rights.
Yep. No.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm wondering what your thoughts of that as an attorney emeritus.
Appreciate that, Ziggy. I will take. First of all, thank you for calling, and I'll give a crack at an answer. It's basically my same answer as when we talk about the Colorado court decision that found that Trump participated in insurrection, but that tangled their reasoning in order to say, but nonetheless, he's not an officer of the United States. By the way, he was the president. But anyway, that he was not an officer of the United States, and therefore he can stand for election and appear on the ballot. It is very hard, and it should be very hard, But it is very hard to be the judge. We'll see if it's hard to be the jury, but it's hard to be the judge. It's hard to be the decision maker. It's even hard to be the prosecutor that puts a former president in jail for the first time in the country's history. That's what I think is going on. That any of the judges to say, oh, we're putting this guy in jail. And it's, by the way, one of the reasons why the entire Trumpistani movement has been decrying villainy for years and almost a decade and talking about abuse of power, etc., so that they can have a rhetorical buttress, a rhetorical wall against legal accountability, against the rule of law, against having the same thing happen to them that would happen to anyone else. Imagine an average black man in America who flouted judicial orders the way this former President Donald Trump has. How many times that person would have gone to jail, or just once because they wouldn't have gone out. It's very, very hard to put a former president, and it should be. It should be. And I want to hesitate in my Monday morning quarterbacking and my sideline rock throwing, because it would be hard for any of us, and it probably should be hard, because the backlash of that would also be significant. I am reminded, I'm forgetting the lawyer's name, but the lawyer in the Nixon case, who in his fact-finding would conclude each bout of testimony with, well, that's not enough to impeach a president. This was the prosecutor, to be clear. This was somebody who was going after him. Well, that's not enough to impeach a president. And kept saying that and kept saying that. So eventually, everybody listening to it would say, well, but of course it is by now. Of course it is enough. We have to build enough of a public record that enough of the country is saying, of course it is enough.
Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So MAGA Mike and the Republicans want a religious test for people running for public office. They want to know that you are sufficiently Christian to be worthy of being elected. Right. MAGA Mike is one of these 7 mountain evangelicals. There are 7 domains where these dominionists believe that we need to have religion completely take them over. Education, religion, family, business, government and military, arts and entertainment, and the media. Seriously. This is not what Jesus was preaching when he said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. This is the opposite, in fact, of what Jesus was teaching. It's the opposite of Matthew 25, where Jesus said the only way to get to heaven is by feeding the hungry, healing the sick, helping the poor. This is counter-Christian, anti-Christian, in fact. In fact, I think you could say it is the Antichrist's work. There's a piece about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
And we are back. Calls are lighting up. Let's go to Hunter from K Falls, Oregon, also known as Klamath Falls. Go ahead, Hunter.
Yeah. You're asking what I'm thankful for? Public schools, and but I hope you can give me a little time. I'm thankful for the millennials coming out and registering to vote because Taylor Swift and all that stuff going on, and I'm thankful for what's his name, Biden, going to Amtrak, and I believe we should have a new project, and Biden should run it and have high-speed trains like Disney World all over the country, and make electricity from the high-speed trains, and Biden can do it, and we need to have the public sector put in money, and Elon Musk and all them start paying their taxes, Bezos and all that. But I believe we can do it. We've got the power to the people. All these corporations are really screwing it up. They're supporting Trump, and they're supporting all this disillusion. You know what I mean?
It's a great call, Hunter. Love everything I had to hear. Thank you for calling. I'll offer just a couple thoughts about it. On the millennial side, this is one of my favorite things to talk about around Thanksgiving holiday with anybody who'll listen, maybe even if they won't, which is remind them to vote. They did studies. Notre Dame and Yale did I think it was Notre Dame and Yale did studies on the what it takes to get people to vote. Number one way to get somebody to vote: tell them to vote. That's it. That is the brilliant research conclusion. Who should tell them? Anybody they'll listen to. Turns out, knocking on the door, talking to them on the telephone, talking about the Thanksgiving dinner table, reminding, hey, you know what? There's some important stuff at stake. And you don't have to limit that to who's running for presidential office. Guaranteed, somebody in your local community is concerned about a woman's right to choose, is concerned about the environment, including access to high-speed rail, or just making sure we don't melt the planet. There's something to care about, even locally, every time.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be back. It's been a good show so far, if I do say so myself. 202-808-9925. Now I'm going to get like 7 calls telling me I'm wrong.
Hey there, it's Giving Tuesday. This is kind of a national holiday for nonprofits. Giving Tuesday, the day that people can step up and select their favorite charity and make a contribution. And so I'd like to ask you to consider making a contribution to Free Speech TV. It is a nonprofit organization. It does great work. You can just call 877-378-8669, or you can go to freespeech.org. We're particularly, trying to sign up people to become monthly donors, to become sustaining members, people who, on a regular basis, every single month, you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they'll just charge it every month, for as long as you say, for a year, or just, until you tell them to stop. And it's a great way to support this network, which is doing great work. I mean, Free Speech TV is just such an incredible gem. And while you're doing that, while you're going to freespeech.org, and while you're calling 877-378-8669 and making your contribution, I wanted to play for you the first roughly 3 minutes of John Kennedy's his inaugural address on January 20th, 1961. Here it is.
We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
That was a time
We observe today
when we very much were committed to the success of liberty in this country. We now have a movement in America, you know, the MAGA movement, that is absolutely opposed to liberty and obsessed with fascism, with violence, with hate, with anger. And here on Free Speech TV, this network that you can contribute to right now on Giving Tuesday, 877-378-8669, right here, we're pushing back. We are holding that torch that John Kennedy handed to us and saying, no, we are the advocates of freedom, the holders of liberty, the supporters of liberty. We are the believers in democracy, and we will fight for democracy, and we will support democracy. And so I'm asking you today on Giving Tuesday to support this great voice of democracy that is Free Speech TV and all the wonderful people who are on this network every single day, sharing with you, and working very hard to do it, by the way, sharing with you their thoughts, their opinions, what they've learned, their wisdom, in order to not just edify you, not just to elevate you and inform you and help you win the water cooler wars and all that, but to help us to reclaim that vision of liberty that we seem to have lost since the Reagan Revolution. We kind of gave it up to, well, just let the big corporations and the billionaires run everything and everything will be just fine. We've discovered that promise of Ronald Reagan was a lie, and it just devastated the American people. So today on Giving Tuesday, please call 877-378-8669 or go to Free Speech and become a regular monthly contributor. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
Let's go straight to your phone calls. Phone's lighting up. Let's go to Dave from Federal Way, Washington. You win the Most Patient Listener Award. Go ahead.
Look, I just want to say that my message is mixed, all right? It's a little bit of a downer, but I think I have a positive finish. Hey, this conversation about how young people are abandoning Biden in droves because of the Israel-Hamas war, and then, what I've been hearing about the Al-Shifa hospital and Israel's, observation of it and, how it plays a role in protecting Hamas. Something has been bugging me about that. Now, I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan, all right? And in 2015, we blew up a hospital in Kunduz. Now, I knew back then there's no way. There's no way. I mean, that was a vengeance attack, all right? And here's the thing is what we are condemning Israel for is exactly what we have done, all right? We are going up, they're attacking, they're bending, well, or whatever. They're manipulating or editing, they're viewing the international laws of war the way we view them against an enemy that uses.
What are you grateful for? I know it's a frickin' hornet's nest. I know that part. And
yeah.
But on here it said you wanted to say something you were grateful for. What are you grateful for?
Well, I'm grateful we're still a democracy, and there was a pundit on. She was saying that Trump's not going to come if he gets elected. He won't be a lame duck president. He has two possible terms to destroy what's left of America's democracy. And frankly, I share her troubles with that, and I would say that it's not Trump, it's his cadre, it's everyone below him. You give them another bite of the apple, they're going to eliminate democracy. But here's what I would say if you have an uncle or an aunt that's a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
There's no need to fight with them, because since this country was founded, since the Danbury Baptist and Thomas Jefferson went back and forth, there has always been an element of authoritarianism, a penchant for it, a preference for it, and we have always pushed it back. I mean, even though I am worried that, autocracy is on the rise around the globe, the timing couldn't be worse. I do think in the end, democracy will prevail.
I appreciate that optimistic take. You be well. Let's go to Jerry in Ontario, California.
Thanks for taking my call.
What do you
Got me with food in my mouth.
What do you eat?
Anyway, we spoke.
Wait, hold on for a second. What are you eating?
I'm eating some 10-year-old like fruit bars. They were, like a little plastic individual.
Where, if they're 10 years old, where'd you get them from? How have they been around so long?
Well, this guy gets this stuff, and I just had them for about 5 years. He had a pallet of them.
Wait. I need to understand this.
Perfect.
Why was it that there were so many of them that it's taken you a while to get to the bottom of the box? Or did you just have them on hold and you wanted to wait for them to savor like wine?
There was a pallet. There was a pallet of them.
So it's just taking you a long time to work through. I'm down.
I didn't have the whole pallet.
Do you know my dad? I borrowed my dad's car, okay? And I can't believe I'm saying this on the air. I'm sorry, Dad. I love you so much. And he keeps on the side of the, what do you call that, the console there? He keeps I'm going to call it a napkin, a tissue paper, that he has used multiple times, because he doesn't want to throw it away. I don't want to waste the tissue paper until he's used it a certain number of times. Like, that reminds me of the person who gets the pallet of fruit bars so they can last a decade. Because nobody wants to go back to the grocery store after buying new fruit bars.
I had him behind the seat where I could reach him going down the road.
That's a good place.
They're perfect. Well, I do this. I sold fruit on the Venice Boardwalk in 1974, so I kind of got.
It's fantastic. Do you have any of that left?
Well, no, but I got a story
about. You still sticking around? Hanging on to for a rainy day? All right, you did not call to talk about the fruit bars, although I enjoyed it very much, but go ahead.
Well, this woman we talked to about before from the Iroquois Federation.
Yeah.
JIGONSASEH. Well, she's on this History Hit network on C-SPAN or on YouTube.
Yep.
And it's under the history of America before colonization.
Oh yeah. Explained.
And the first segment has her in it as the first it's on governance and trade is the segment.
All right. And so what should we Google? Is it Iroquois women? Is it what should we search to find it?
It's on YouTube.
Great.
Just look up the History Hit Network.
History Network.
It's the history of America before colonization exposed or explained. And it's just put in 1491 and they come up. There's about 4 of them there.
Jerry, thank you so much. And off the air, I'll send you my address. Give me some fruit bars.
Okay.
All right, man. You be well. Take care. Connie from Santa Fe, you're on the air.
Hey, I'm grateful I can go and get a candy bar and just eat it today. And just,
you could do
fresh from the store.
You can. You could. Either way you want to go. Either way, I have to say something, Connie. So this is because I got to compliment my dad about this. If it'd be better if more people like my dad, it'd be better for the climate. Right? This is a guy, you should check it out. I've called him the paper towel king because he did a TED talk on how to use a paper towel, and it's got like some number of millions of views because he's parsimonious with how to use a paper towel. He's really, but here's another example. He's real mad because my stepbrother threw away his gloves because because Dad had a pair of gloves. But when I say a pair of gloves, he had 2 gloves. One was left, one was right. He found one of them on the side of the road. And he found the other one actually at the Obama inauguration. And one was leather and one was cloth. And he said, that's perfect, because one I can use to like drive the car and the other I can use like operate things. And he was very disappointed. My brother thought that these are mismatched gloves. We're not going to find him, so he gave him to Goodwill or whatever. And Goodwill probably didn't take them, so they threw them away. And Dad's like, these are the perfect gloves. And my dad prefers, my dad would prefer a 5-year-old fruit bar to a fruit bar that's recent, because it's not as wasteful. But that's also not what you called. Connie, go ahead.
Well, I'm grateful for friends and family here and in Oregon and other places in the world who are in their 70s and 80s, and they are working for the liberal left, Democratic. They're voting, even if we like voting by mail, but they're voting, they're knocking on doors, and they are hoping that the younger ones are going to come out. So they're talking to their 30-year-old nephews, and from what we know, the kids are, and a lot of that is women's issues and gay issues, and just things that like, wait a minute, because they tell me, my 40-year-old niece tells me, hey, we don't care if someone's overweight or if they live with a woman or, if they're black and we're white. We just have a lot of fun. We want everybody. And I said, well, translate that over then and let's keep on with Biden. And I'm also so grateful to the good first ladies we've had. There are some that didn't take
thanks
part.
For bringing this up.
Bess Truman stayed in Missouri apparently most of the time. But we've learned, I think, a lot about Rosalind Carter in the last few days, and how she was not just the dutiful wife, but she was moving and shaking. And that's one thing that I hope we can continue with, because the former First Lady was worse than a disappointment. So anyway, I am grateful for that. Oh, and the last thing, you spoke about how some of your family wouldn't even speak FDR's name, and we know how strong Eleanor Roosevelt was. But FDR was in a wheelchair, and he was a chain smoker, and nobody ever said we didn't say, he's too old, he's too disabled. Look at him fall on the stairs and all this. That really has been a change.
Connie, I appreciate it, and thanks for the insight, and thank you also for bringing up Rosalind Carter. I've been slow to do it, and the Carter family, what a paragon, what an example that they have set to not only a former president but a human being, right? Like the stark contrast. Well, frankly, the stark contrast with the Carter family and just about anybody. I don't have that level of virtue, but the stark contrast between them and the most recent exiter of the White House is almost mind-boggling. And I know this is an overused note, but that something that calls itself the Christian anything, Christian right, Christian whatever, can somehow tangle themselves to think that someone like Donald Trump is more worthy of their support by vote or donation or retweet than the Carter family. It is remarkable to me. My wife thinks that we should start holding a vigil for Jimmy Carter, because she can't imagine that he will stick around that much longer after his wife passed. I predicted a few years back that Jimmy Carter would die at the age of 99. And I was asked why. So, well, that's the same age John Wooden died. So, well, why does that matter? Well, it's not exactly that it matters. It's that I knew John Wooden would die at 99, or I thought he died at 99 because he would think it was arrogant to live to 100. It's just like 99 is the perfect age. If you could live, pretty much as long as anybody, just keep it in 2 digits. I'm not saying you shouldn't live to 100, but if you're already kind of famous, you're a humble person like one of us, right? You can live 120. I don't know. But if you're kind of famous and a big deal, and then you're kind of showing off, you lived 104. You know what I'm saying? So I think 99 was I'm not rooting for that, to be clear. It was my prediction. All right, let's go to Let's go to Bob from San Jose. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I'm thankful for several things. One, I like the poem you began the program with this morning.
Thank you.
That was really quite nice, and I'd like to know are you going to have? Well, let me put it this way: is Sue going to have the stack so I can find it where that came from, so I can get a copy of it?
She's pretty darn good, so I suspect she will. And if she needs a link from me, I'm happy to give it.
Okay, great. Second thing, I'm 81. I'm a retired broadcast engineer. I know about the inner workings of radio and TV stations very well. When I wake up, I don't hurt. I'm just a little stiff maybe, but that goes away pretty quickly, and I am very grateful for that. But the thing that is a miracle, I developed cataracts, and I've been told it's a function of age. When you get to be in your 70s, you're likely to develop it. And I had double vision in one eye. I had never seen anything like that before. I went to the doctor. They said, "Oh, yeah, we can fix that." And in fact, they did both my eyes. One 3 years ago, the other one about 6 months ago. And they replaced the lens with a little plastic thing, and I see as good as I did 30 years ago. It's a miracle.
Well, congratulations.
That lens replacement thing is a real miracle, and I have to tell you that I would otherwise be functionally close to blind. I love reading, and without the lens replacement, I'd be stuck not being able to read anymore.
It's same as my dad, by the way, and actually not because of cataracts, but my brother also just got the lens replacement, and it's changed their lives. I have not yet had the courage, but congratulations to you.
But you do it. No, you do it when you have to.
I get
it. It's not a. But they offered it to me, and I said, I think I'll do that, and it's a miracle.
Well, that's awesome.
And I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I'm grateful for that as well. Happy Thanksgiving. You be well. We'll be right back. Call in line 202-808-9925. We're going to have a guest on in a little bit. Well, what do you want to talk about with your relatives or strangers? We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Okay. This is the Thom Hartmann Show, 202-808-9925. Welcome, everybody. Let's go straight to Norm from Woodstock, Illinois.
Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm feeling better than I have any right to expect today.
Listen, I've got one thing to say before I get into what I really want to talk about. I just have to say this. You can't fix stupid, but the hats sure make it easy to identify.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure which hats you're talking about, but yes, of course I know which hat you're talking about. No, but I actually do have a comment on that, but maybe there was something more you wanted to say before I responded to your quip.
Definitely. I live in Woodstock, Illinois, and I'm fortunate enough to have, a pretty good commuter transit. I can get downtown Chicago in 2 hours. It just ain't fast enough. I want high-speed rail, but then again, you have to be realistic as to how much that's going to cost and which of the 1% want to pay for it.
Yeah, but we could get some of it, right? I mean, we should at least find those corridors that get lots of plane travel, lots of long car rides, and lots of slow trains. At least find those corridors, right? Like here on the West Coast, it has felt sort of silly. There isn't something that goes between Seattle, at least San Francisco, or between Seattle and Los Angeles, or if Vancouver, BC wanted to get in the mix, all the way down to San Diego as well. But and heck, on the East Coast, between Philadelphia and New York, even Washington D.C. I mean, imagine if you could do that. I mean, was it the Acela? I know there's some trains that are pretty good, but what if you could double the speed? That'd be pretty cool. I would love it. Anything else you wanted to plug?
Just Thanksgiving, and wishing everybody a happy one, and I'm thankful for the fact that Donald Trump is no longer president.
Knock on some wood, Norm. So I did want to say something about your line, you can't fix stupid. So who do we talk to during, and somebody else earlier said, oh, I forget their name, earlier said, well, we shouldn't, don't spend time arguing with, it was Dave. Don't spend time arguing, right? Here's my tip. Telling somebody that they're wrong does not ever convince them of that, almost ever. Almost ever. Try to find something you agree on, but something that might impact worldview as well. That's worth talking about, finding areas of agreement. The other is just recruitment. Flipping somebody from a hard MAGA person to a non-hard, that is a very hard thing to do. I'm not saying it's not worth time, I'm just saying it's a very, very hard thing to do. But there are a lot of people in this country who aren't as engaged as they ought to be. And this community, reaching out to the next generation, encouraging them, heck, to listen and watch this program, encouraging to subscribe to Sue's excellent emails, engaging them in the voting process. That is really worthy conversation. You have built up goodwill in your friend networks and your families. Use that goodwill to strengthen democracy. Dave from Pelican City, we got about a minute.
Oh, yes, sir. I'll start out by saying I'm grateful for a competent, capable president that can see us through these times, because the other alternatives scare the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And it kills me to say this, but I'm grateful that my father is no longer here to see what's going on. He was a Marine, and he loved this country and loved the flag, and boy, it would just destroy him to see what's going on now.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I wanted to ask was, as a lawyer, and I have one more point after this, which was my main point.
You got time for about 20 seconds.
How can the oath of office, excuse me? How can the oath of office refer to the office of president without that person being an officer? Anyway,
it's an excellent point. It's an excellent point. We'll be back right after this.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody is covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out.
We're going to keep doing the phone calls. Let's keep doing this. Let's keep doing the speed round. Let's clear this board. Mario, you win the most patient listener award. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I have to say a few things about the napkins. I use my napkins all the time.
There you go.
My wife tells me do not. About the Rosalind Carter.
So you are like my dad, and you're both virtuous and marvelous people, and I fall short in many scores. Continue, please.
And about Rosalind Carter, she was saying in the news that she cannot get it over when they lose the election. I got news for you. I cannot get it over yet. They elect a guy that is played with monkeys, and Mr. Carter, a nuclear scientist, into a submarine for protecting our nation, and they went and elect this monkey guy by Ronald Reagan. And I cannot get it over yet.
Oh, you're the monkey guy. You're saying because was it Bedtime for Bonzo, Ronald Reagan's movie? Now I understand what you're talking about. That we threw out somebody who's been a legitimate not a TV war hero, but actual war hero who deeply virtuous, who spent his, half of his life like building homes for the poor after he was president of the United States, and he didn't need anything from anybody. And I think you called Reagan the monkey guy. Go on, continue.
And be in charge of a submarine, a nuclear submarine. And they like this monkey ranch guy. But the reason that I call it this, I'm thankful. I'm very thankful that this country opened their arms to me 60 years ago. I was born in Mexico City, and this country opened arms for me, and it's been great. I mean, super great life that I ever can imagine. Second, that I met my wife for 50 years with 4 kids. And the third, and one of the most important, that I met 25 years ago, Mr. Thom Hartmann. And it's the greatest experience that I ever have. And then Kim put you in charge. And for me to not monopolize my talking, I wish all these Arab countries, all these Arab people speaking, listen. Don't make you fool you. Don't make you fool you. This is where we are here, and we have room for everyone. To every single Palestinian or Arab speaking, put attention. Put attention. Don't hear what they're saying to you. Be strong with Mr. Biden.
Mario, love the call. Thank you so much. So glad you came. Mario's America, everybody. That's America. Okay? For the people who clothe themselves in a flag falsely, thinking America should be just who they are, Mario's America. That's the best part. That's the best part. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back in a little bit.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. Hey there, it's Giving Tuesday. This is kind of a national holiday for nonprofits. Giving Tuesday, the day that people can step up and select their favorite charity and make a contribution. And so I'd like to ask you to consider making a contribution to Free Speech TV. It is a nonprofit organization. It does great work. You can just call 877-378-8669, or you can go to freespeech.org. We're particularly, trying to sign up people to become monthly donors, to become sustaining members, people who, on a regular basis, every single month, you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they'll just charge it every month, for as long as you say, for a year, or just, until you tell them to stop. And it's a great way to support this network, which is doing great work. I mean, Free Speech TV is just such an incredible gem. And while you're doing that, while you're going to freespeech.org and while you're calling 877-378-8669 and making your contribution, I wanted to play for you the first roughly 3 minutes of John Kennedy's his inaugural address on January 20th, 1961. Here it is.
We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
That was a time when we very much were committed to the success of liberty in this country. We now have a movement in America, you know, the MAGA movement, that is absolutely opposed to liberty and obsessed with fascism, with violence, with hate, with anger. And here on Free Speech TV, this network that you can contribute to right now on Giving Tuesday, 877-378-8669, right here, we're pushing back. We are holding that torch that John Kennedy handed to us and saying, no, we are the advocates of freedom, the holders of liberty, the supporters of liberty. We are the believers in democracy, and we will fight for democracy, and we will support democracy. And so I'm asking you today on Giving Tuesday to support this great voice of democracy that is Free Speech TV and all the wonderful people who are on this network every single day, sharing with you, and working very hard to do it, by the way, sharing with you their thoughts, their opinions, what they've learned, their wisdom, in order to not just edify you, not just to elevate you and inform you and help you win the water cooler wars and all that, but to help us to reclaim that vision of liberty that we seem to have lost since the Reagan Revolution. We kind of gave it up to, well, just let the big corporations and the billionaires run everything and everything will be just fine. We've discovered that promise of Ronald Reagan was a lie, and it just devastated the American people. So today on Giving Tuesday, please call 877-378-8669 or go to Free Speech and become a regular monthly contributor. Thank you so much for watching and for your support.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
How are we going to talk to folks this weekend? What are we going to talk to them about? I'll tell you my favorite question. We'll bring on Matt Robison, our honored guest. My favorite question lately, and to be clear, I ask this when I'm not with my Republican extended family. I usually ask this question when I'm with people who live near me who tend to be more likely progressives than Democrats. And I ask them, who's the worst president over the last 50 years? And I say, rank the presidents from worst to least worst. And we talk through that, and I hear them. It's interesting who very often comes in last. And by last, I mean least worst. It's interesting. This is called a teaser. Let's bring on our guest, Matt Robison, writer, podcast host, political analyst, focuses on trends in demographics, psychology, policy, and economics that are shaping American politics. Writing has been featured in Newsweek, Alternate, Raw Story. He co-hosts the Beyond Politics podcast with former Congressman Paul Hodes, and he is our guest right now. Matt Robison, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, Jeff. How are you? Are you ready for those dinner table conversations?
No. In fact, we're doing. No, I'm not. It's to be clear, this is selfish. I want to have you here so that I can prepare. So I have 2 Thanksgivings this year. One that we're doing with this little gratitude outfit we've got that's just getting together to talk about sort of things we're grateful for. They're sort of outside kind of our extended life. And then and I was foolish enough to offer to host both of these. And then we're doing our sort of family and found family on Thanksgiving Day itself. In fact, right after this, I am leaving to go set up the house for the first one that's happening tonight. How I got into this mess, it's not your fault, so I shouldn't bother everybody with it. But I am not ready. So having you here, it's selfish. I want to help get ready. You're not ready either.
I'm as ready as I'm going to be. I host 42 people at my Thanksgiving. You know these 42 people. These are people that they're randos, basically. You know this when you host a podcast. Sometimes people come out of the woodwork.
They just wander by.
Yes, exactly. No, I managed to marry into a very large family, and it's delightful that they come. And most of the time, I avoid those most unpleasant Thanksgiving conversations that we all dread. So it's not that bad.
So where do you host this? And by that I mean the address, in case there's a 43rd person who wants to drop by.
That's right. Pretty soon I'm coming up on the numeration of our presidents. I'm in Amherst, Massachusetts. We are an outpost of North Wokistan in the middle of North Trumpistan in the greater Massachusetts area.
Lovely place. All right. So when in your 42, for the most part in, greater or lesser Wokistan, is it a mixed group politically?
It's generally not.
Yep.
There's, we flock together. But, I'm kind of being tongue-in-cheek. If people have heard of Amherst, they've probably heard about it as, 5 colleges, super liberal, and that's true. But it truly is an island in a sea of, let's just say, MAGA-tudity. And so I do have a lot of interactions with people of the Trumpian persuasion, and I'm used to dealing with that kind of thing.
All right. So do you have tips? And I'll start with tips, and then I want to tell you about my porch conversation that I have, because I think you have a point that overlaps with it very strongly. But do you have any tips for dealing with people when we escape our bubbles, intentionally or unintentionally, tips for engaging in those conversations?
Well, the first thing I think have to do is read the conversation you're in. If you've got an unhinged bigot, or let's say you're talking to Jacob Chansley, the QAnon shaman, he's at your dinner table for Thanksgiving.
He's
your
coming
best
to
strategy.
Mine.
Yes. So your best strategy in that case is to say, hey, can I try on your horns and please pass the cranberry sauce? Do not engage. There's no point. It's like that Barney Clip viral thing from 12 years ago where he's talking at a healthcare town hall and he says, why would I bother to engage in conversation with you? I'd rather talk to this table. It's got the same point to it. But most of the time, with most people,
do you think he brings around his horns like most of the time? Do you think
I would? He's running for Congress now. I mean, that's got to be the number one conversation starter. I definitely would. If Jacob,
would you have them? I can think of 3 options. I can think of 4 options. I could think of on my head. I could think of in the back seat like a sheriff's rifle in the 1940s. I could think of on the. I could think of as on a backpack. So I can just, quick change. And then I can have a staffer carry him. Would you have a preference?
I would look. I think of everything in terms of I'm a former congressional campaign manager.
Yeah.
And so I would think about fundraising swag. Like, can't you turn this into the greatest fundraising vehicle in history? I would think so. Like, if Elizabeth Warren
get
can
100 of those
bank,
things, sell them on Truth Social.
Bumper stickers that say "Nevertheless she persisted." I mean, little replica horns. Come on.
Man. He missed that for Halloween.
Unless you're talking to Jacob Shansley. I mean, most of the time you're talking to someone who is redeemable, non-deplorable, as Hillary would put it. The first thing that conflict management experts say, and my number one tip, I've used this plenty of times and it works, is just read back what the other person is saying, because listening is persuasive. It's the most important thing. Take what they're saying to you, even if it really rubs you the wrong way, and try and read it back to them, paraphrase it back to them in a way that you can connect with, identify with. They say, hey, we've got to shut down the borders, find all 11 million undocumented people in this country and ship them out. You find a way to say, what I hear you saying is that it's really important to you to protect the border and to have borders in this country, because that's sort of what defines a country. I can hear where you're coming from on that. Just giving people that psychological safe harbor of, hey, you know what? They're not like totally unhinged and crazy. Making them feel heard is the first step to at least lowering the temperature. There are other things you can do from there, but that's my number one.
All right, so number one tip is listen and affirm what is worthy of affirmation.
Right, something that you can find common ground on. And that actually is step number 2. Find a way that you're validating them to some extent, and you're not questioning motives. You're trying to say back to them, like, I know that what you really care about, you're really patriotic. You really love this country, and that identity is really important to you. And I feel that too. I'm really patriotic. Like my best friend served in the military. I mean, just find a way to find that positive common ground. And then look, if you want to get into saying, look, I've got a different perspective, find a way. It's like communications 101. Find a common story to tell about it. Here's where I'm coming from. Let me tell you about my friend who is the child of undocumented people in this country, and what they've gone through. Find a way to make it a positive thing. And I'll give you my one final. Use brainwashing, and I mean that in the best possible way. There are time-tested techniques to crack psychological armor, and one of them is see if you can find a little place where they maybe disagree with the orthodoxy of their own political tribe. See if there's anything, and I've used this in a conversation in my amidst Greater Trumpistan. I was talking to a guy named Joe, who I coach basketball with. He's a dyed-in-the-wool Trump person. And I just asked him, is there ever a time where you feel like Donald Trump maybe goes a little too far? And he said, well, actually, I don't like this and such and the other thing. And that allows you a way in, another way to find common ground. You're not going to solve it all in one conversation, but it's definitely a pathway to a more harmonious Thanksgiving.
All right, so 3 steps. This is truly useful stuff, all right? And I want to make sure I get these right, and if I miss something, correct me. So step 1 is listen, right? And even find a chance to affirm something worthy of affirmation, which is then potentially a segue to 2. Explore, find some area of common ground. Might be a specific thing, might be a general thing. Might be democracy, might be America is great, might be it's important that everybody has a chance to be heard, or it might be something more specific. Might be antitrust law, might be campaign finance reform. And then 3rd is see if you can find a place where they are willing to challenge their own orthodoxy to see if there's an opening. I loved your question, right? Is there anywhere you think that Donald Trump goes too far? Are there any place you think the Republican Party, maybe isn't always right? That's very interesting, and I have had some luck with conversations around. I mentioned two of the topics, right? Like talking about big tech and not merely throwing stones at tools I use every day, but rather saying, well, to what degree should they control America? I've had interesting conversations there. Money in politics, I've had interesting conversations. Sortition, citizen juries, like actual democracy, I've had interesting conversations there. Any areas where you have found that find some crossover appeal, either general, right, or specific?
I'll take it back to the story of me talking to Joe. That's a real name. That's not a pseudonym. He's an average Joe. And I opened with that. Is there ever a place where you feel like Donald Trump goes too far? We talked a little bit about some of that. And then I went to, would it surprise you to know that under Joe Biden, unemployment is at the lowest level it's been in 50 years? And he was genuinely surprised to hear that. And one thing that's worth bearing in mind for everyone listening or watching this is, I'm not just pandering to the audience here, Jeff. The people who listen to this show are by definition very special. They're in the 0.1% top high information Americans out there. This isn't a diss on the rest of Americans. The rest of America are normie people. They have other things going on in their lives. They're not political obsessives like you and me. On my show, Beyond Politics, I had a pollster, a fascinating guy, who had done a study and found that voters take in about 10 minutes a week of political information. 10 minutes a week. There are over 10,000 minutes in a week. That means they spend 0.1% of their time.
1/1000th of their time.
Taking in political information. So it's true, you might be talking to the QAnon shaman or some other high information person. Chances are,
I like that you called him a high information person. That's good. That's good.
He is high in a certain way and in a certain kind of information.
Yeah. No, it's good to call him.
But most of the time, you're talking to someone who's just living their lives, like my friend Joe, who runs a trucking company. He's a smart guy. He's an able guy. And, there is information that he has just not come across that's not getting covered in the media. And so there are opportunities on things like that. People do care about jobs and the economy. They do care about kind of core values. Like, they generally, even MAGA people, don't want to see fellow Americans suffer. If they're poor, if they're underprivileged, there are areas of common ground that I've found in conversations.
Matt Robinson is with us. He'll be with us also right after the music, right after this break. You listen to the Thom Hartmann Show. I'm Jefferson Smith. Thank you so much. We're talking about how to prepare for and what to talk about this Thanksgiving weekend. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Who's the worst president? Who are the worst presidents in the last 50 years? Rank them worst to least worst in your own head. Start doing it. All right. So, Matt, I did want to ask you. So when we get back in a little bit, I've asked people to start this little exercise of ranking their worst presidents. When I ask who's people's favorite president, it's a different question, but so I start that way. Before we do that, I want to ask you about you have a chance to look at this stuff, talk about this stuff, listen about this stuff. Do you have any impressions on the Republican nomination fight? Do you think on what's going to happen in Iowa? I know that DeSantis just got an endorsement he's been wanting, and I think probably was timed to come out, to try to give him a boost, and needed that boost right after the most recent poll that I think had him drop to fourth. Do you think it's relatively predictable and the polls are telling us what's going to happen, or do you think there's any possible shift in the dynamic in the Republican primary?
In brief, I think that it is possible. It's not likely. I mean, we didn't foresee COVID before it happened. We don't foresee exogenous events. I think it would take one, is sort of the bottom line. And what I see in the primary is sort of the Republican Party trying to find a way to cobble together and psychologically ease themselves out of the Donald Trump thrall You know, and it's not coming together. Like they can't break the fever.
Who have you ranked? And I don't know if you already started in your head, maybe you've done it on paper a million times already. But did you think, call it last 50 years, who's your worst president, second worst, third worst, et cetera? Feel free to go. You can do the first one or two, or you can go down the list as fast as you choose.
From worst to best?
I said worst to least worst, but you could say worst to best. And we don't have to get all the way to best, but you could just wonder how you start.
Well, Trump.
Yeah.
And probably Nixon. I'm judging by preserving American democracy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd go Trump, Nixon, Reagan.
So you put George W. Bush. So when I ask this question, I like to do it a little bit at a time, because when I ask this question on my porch, it's Trump usually gets worst. Not always. Some people who are really interested in international affairs are still real grumpy at George W. Bush. George W. Bush, after painting and sitting next to Michelle Obama, doesn't draw as much anger from people as he once did. But people analyze it. I've had a couple Reagans who said, "Listen, Reagan started the whole thing, so we got to give him the most." And Nixon's had the biggest variance. I've had Nixon being Democrats' favorite, and least favorite Republican president. So, but anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I judge by are you fundamentally undermining or actively trying to destroy the system of American democracy.
It's a pretty good test.
I elevate that over policy preference, even if I find the policies odious. And George W., I give a little bit of an up arrow because of PEPFAR. I mean, if you save 25 million lives, mostly in Africa, that has to go on your ledger somewhere. Let's see. From there, I mean, after you get to W, you probably go up from there. Gerald Ford, Carter, George Sr. Actually, I'd probably put Carter above George Sr.
And this is the interesting, right? It was like where the shift takes place, right? For a Democrat and for progressive, are there Republicans they put over Democrats? And sometimes people will do that, right? They'll pick. I've had somebody pick Nixon. Certainly, I've had people pick George Sr. Stay tuned after the music. We're going to also hear, and then I want to get to the punchline in just a moment. Listen to the Thom Hartmann Show. This is Matt Robinson. His show is Beyond Politics.
Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So Vivek Ramaswamy, during the first Republican debate, was laying out his vision for America. And by the way, he was the #2 guy in the debate, according to the Washington Post, in which he was arguing that we should basically do away with all of our federal agencies. Really, virtually all of them. Just shut them down and make them go away. He's not the first person to argue this. David Koch, running on the Libertarian ticket in 1980 for vice president, was arguing the same thing. He had a long list of federal agencies he wanted to shut down. This is not an uncommon thing among billionaires, and Ramaswamy is a billionaire. They basically want to take America back to the 1920s, before we had what they call the welfare state. And if they do so, they will turn America into a failed state. They want to make America into something like Haiti or Libya, and that would be a disaster. There's a whole article about it that you can read all the details. It's titled, "Is Vivek Ramaswamy a Different Kind of Republican Cat?" at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
So, to Matt Robinson, our guest. All right. Matt, we were talking about Matt Robinson's least favorite presidents ranked to, or excuse me, worst presidents up to least worst. And his ranking was roughly Trump worst, I think Nixon second worst, I think then you went, maybe George Bush a little bit better than that, eventually started transitioning. You had Ford, and then you had sort of, well, do I put Carter, George W. Bush there in the middle, and you could see it either way. Please continue.
Yeah, so I'm defining this as first most important thing is active insurrection, trying to overturn American democracy, so Trump worst. So Trump, Nixon, Reagan, W. Then I get to Ford, Bush Sr. Then I start to hit the Democrats because now I'm beginning to veer over into policy preferences. So I'll hit Carter, Clinton, and then maybe controversially, Obama, and finally in the top spot I have Joe Biden.
What's very interesting to me, Matt, is that is the most common answer I get. By a relatively significant margin. It is the most common answer I get. Now, I know that if I ask these people, because very often these people, oh, what's going on? Why aren't we doing blank? Why haven't we done blank? Right? If I said, who's the best president of your lifetime? Very few of them would have Joe Biden at the tip of their tongue. Right? If I start with that, right? I mean, and you hear and you look at polls that say, oh, it's sort of middling enthusiasm, and oh, that guy's old, so let's turn over the country to a fascist. I don't quite understand that argument, but I've heard it. Not usually stated quite that baldly, but very rarely do people say to come out and enthusiastically, Biden's the best, Biden's the best, Biden's the best. Right? People aren't wearing red Biden hats. But when I ask people who are pro-democracy folks, right? These aren't folks who are trying to figure out how to undermine democracy. Their criterion, their first criterion might be the same as yours. Yours would certainly be among theirs. Biden usually comes in last, and by last, I mean best of the last 50 years, more than anybody else. I find it interesting. You have maybe a similar experience.
That's right. If you ask me off the bat, you've pulled a fascinating psychological trick by priming me with an intelligent question. I love it. I'm so into the way you've done this. Yeah, I mean, if you ask me off the bat, who are you most enthusiastic about? I would say Barack Obama. I was a Barack Obama guy. But when I look at the tail of the tape, in terms of America was in a car.
We're going to break. We're going to break.
808-9925.
We'll be right back. We'll say goodbye to Matt Robinson right after this break.
Hey there, it's Giving Tuesday. This is kind of a national holiday for nonprofits. Giving Tuesday, the day that people can step up and select their favorite charity and make a contribution. And so I'd like to ask you to consider making a contribution to Free Speech TV. It is a nonprofit organization. It does great work. You can just call 877-378-8669, or you can go to freespeech.org. We're particularly, trying to sign up people to become monthly donors, to become sustaining members, people who, on a regular basis, every single month, you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they'll just charge it every month, for as long as you say, for a year, or just, until you tell them to stop. And it's a great way to support this network, which is doing great work. I mean, Free Speech TV is just such an incredible gem. And while you're doing that, while you're going to freespeech.org, and while you're calling 877-378-8669 and making your contribution, I wanted to play for you the first roughly 3 minutes of John Kennedy's his inaugural address on January 20th, 1961. Here it is.
We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. the belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
That was a time
We observe today
when we very much were committed to the success of liberty in this country. We now have a movement in America, you know, the MAGA movement, that is absolutely and obsessed with fascism, with violence, with hate, with anger. And here on Free Speech TV, this network that you can contribute to right now on Giving Tuesday, 877-378-8669, right here, we're pushing back. We are holding that torch that John Kennedy handed to us and saying, no, we are the advocates of freedom, the holders of liberty, the supporters of liberty. We are the believers in democracy, and we will fight for democracy, and we will support democracy. And so I'm asking you today on Giving Tuesday to support this great voice of democracy that is Free Speech TV and all the wonderful people who are on this network every single day, sharing with you, and working very hard to do it, by the way, sharing with you their thoughts, their opinions, what they've learned, their wisdom, in order to not just edify you, not just to elevate you and inform you and help you win the water cooler wars and all that, but to help us to reclaim that vision of liberty that we seem to have lost since the Reagan Revolution. We kind of gave it up to, well, just let the big corporations and the billionaires run everything and everything will be just fine. We've discovered that promise of Ronald Reagan was a lie, and it just devastated the American people. So today on Giving Tuesday, please call 877-378-8669 or go to Free Speech and become a regular monthly contributor. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. Hey, if you like the rants that I open the show with every day, they're typically published over at HartmanReport.com. Check it out. From Los Angeles to Columbia, South Carolina, from Birmingham, Alabama to Baltimore, universal basic income programs are chalking up proof after proof of their viability. Basically just giving people, low-income people, poor people, somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a month, no strings attached, is lifting people out of poverty, getting them back on track, getting them into solid middle-class jobs, helping their children tremendously. This works. Now, we don't have to do UBI in the United States. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a national health care program. Health expenses are whacking a lot of low-income people. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have free college education. Education expenses are whacking people. There's a lot we could do. We can subsidize housing. We can subsidize food. We do that with food stamps. We could expand it. There's a lot we could do to benefit from this. There's a whole report about that over at hartmannreport.com. Check it out.
Thom Hartmann Program. I'm Jefferson Smith. So the run up to Thanksgiving, we wanted to, before we just left unceremoniously at the break, wanted to say thank you, hear a closing thought from, and be able to say more, if not artfully, at least politely, goodbye to Matt Robison. Matt was wrapping up his thought. We went through this sort of ranking least worst, or should be worst to least worst presidents, and you were finishing your thought. Matt, please finish your thought.
It was just the thought that if you look at the Biden record and the fact that we were in a country that was careening over a flaming car cliff scenario, and now we're not, that gets him the #1 ranking in my book.
Yeah, no, it's certainly, if I compare his accomplishments to Obama's first term or Clinton's first term accomplishments, it's not very close. If you compare number of mistakes made, I mean, that's, I think, one of the reasons for the fix. I mean, this is a dumb analysis. Forgive me for dumb analysis, but I literally think the fixation on his age is in part because he hasn't screwed up a whole bunch of stuff, right? That what they've got is that he confuses Britney Spears and Travis Kelce's girlfriend. The what's her name? I'm forgetting. I'm getting old, man.
Taylor Swift.
Thank you very
much.
much.
You got to have teenagers in the house, and then you'd remember. Trust me.
I'm trying to give cover for the president. So that's what they've got, right? Because they have a fake messed up economy. They have like gas prices that were high and now aren't quite as high as they were. They've got the after effects of the pandemic he didn't start, right? And they got the fact that he's old. Like, what do they got? And I really think that's one of the reasons there's so much fixation on it, is because he hasn't like had a bunch of sex with a bunch of people in the White House, right? Because he's know of. They can't just, like, white racists can't be racist against him, right? So they can't fake make up that he was born in Kenya. They don't know what to do. So instead they say, well, how about we just say he's old lots of times? Instead of just saying that along with 10 other things, they just say that lots of times. That's a dumb analysis. Forget my dumb analysis, but it's part of my analysis.
It is an incontrovertible fact. That is all they've got. And look, let's just say out loud what is happening here. They have gone full fascist. The media is no longer afraid to say that. They're no longer afraid to say that word out loud, point out that that is the direction that Trump and his allies have gone. And the response from the right-wing media is age, age, age. It's the butthurt emails of 2023. And so, fighting that, overcoming that, lands Biden the top spot.
Yeah. Well, Matt, I want to give you a chance to plug your show because we appreciate your time so much.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Well, the podcast is Beyond Politics. It's me and former U.S. Congressman and Barack Obama National Co-Chair 2008, Paul Hodes. And if people like the video side of things, we're on the Blue Amp channel on YouTube. It's me and a former ad writer for Joe Biden, and we are not afraid to pull some punches, which I know you are not on this program as well.
Matt Robinson, thanks for the time. Thanks for what you do.
My pleasure. Great to be with you.
And let's go straight to the telephones. It was awesome to have Matt here. It's also wonderful to have the patient listeners. Let's go to Steve, who wins the Most Patient Listener Award. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm very grateful and show gratitude for my union.
Which union?
My union is
which union?
Which is the Labor's Union, LIUNA.
Yep.
And I've been I got my first job while I was in college, and then moved to Alaska and worked in Alaska and Washington and Oregon and Hawaii and Nevada. And as a result of that, I was able to retire at 58 and have a wonderful retirement, but also to be able to, I'm down in Manhattan, Kansas now, taking care of my brother that's got ALS. And I can afford to keep my place in Washington, in Bellingham, and still come down and take care of him. And I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, that's fantastic, Jerry. Did your union get you more engaged in politics and democracy than you might have been otherwise?
Oh, definitely. You know, they bring out what it's going to mean, the different candidates, where their stances, and how that's going to affect you work-wise.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful tool.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your call. Thanks for being part of the community.
Well, thanks for being there, Jefferson. I enjoy your show.
Be well. Let's go to Rich in Indianapolis. You are I think you want to talk about Edmund Burke. You've been waiting very patiently.
Oh, you're the best, man. Thank you. I want to begin, please, by offering the word compersion, C-O-M-P-E-R-S-I-O-N. It means empathetic joy. Like
what a
you're
good word.
Feeling good. You're feeling good for someone else's happiness, that they are positive and they are up and they are joyful, and you're like, man, that is so cool.
So it's kind of so compersion. It's a word I didn't know. It's a word we should know. Compersion. What a great word. And it sounds like it's almost the opposite of Schadenfreude.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Keep going.
Perfect. So those are the polar opposites.
Yeah.
And I could never be happy for a Nazi, though. Okay.
I'm Schadenfreude for when they lose.
Yeah. Exactly. So Burke. Got a couple of quotes that are very nice that I have around. Never despair, but if you do, work on in despair. And that is, again, this bolstering.
Never despair, but if you do, work on in despair. Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. And the thing that I'm so struck by is how we never acknowledge that we're all in the same boat, and we are all absolutely shouting about the same thing, even if we've been misled and are talking unhappy things to do to get us course correct. Because what we all are at the same time is discontent with the way that they, what own the planet, are doing with it and to us.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. We are all together, unrest, and some have been misled by those that own the planet and want us to fight amongst one another. And what we have to do is get back to that, being happy for all of us together, being happy, talk to one another in ways that allow us to all recognize the best path, the right path life.
Yeah.
And, so the punchline with an Edmund Burke is the people never give up their liberties, but under some delusion.
The people never give up their liberties, but under some
delusion.
Yes. Appreciate it, Jerry. It's a great call. Appreciate your participation.
Love you, brother. Bye-bye.
Likewise. Love you back. Jerry from Winston-Salem, you get the runner-up for most patient listener award. Go ahead.
Hey, Jeff. You hang around there, Thom Hartmann, make an icon out of you, too.
Calling Tom an icon is a kind thing. It's good.
Couple of comments. Let me summarize Matt. We're living in an epidemic of political and historical ignorance here in the United States. But anyway, that pretty much sums that up. And to Mario, let me remind people that don't know, in 1980, October, the representative of the Reagan administration had went behind Carter's back and made a deal with Iran. The hostages were about to be released.
Yeah.
But Iran waited till just a few minutes after noon, January the 20th, 1980, and released the hostages. But anyway...
No, I want to dwell on that for a moment. That one of the bummers, that's an understated word, one of the bummers of Donald Trump crying falsely wolf with a rigged election is that Nixon against LBJ and hence yielding LBJ not running again, and Reagan against Carter, both with international relationships and international financial relationships, rigged those elections. By that I mean rigged international deals to make the domestic president be less popular so that they could eke out close victories, and it is or push somebody out of the race. That's an important part of American history to understand, that where we are now, with a 50-year period of a rightward shift, of a anti-democracy shift, of an anti-true freedom shift. This isn't just something that happened because of a wellspring of change of mood. This is something that got done, and it got manipulated, and it's been manipulated over and over again by brilliant strategic people, but not by brilliant strategic people with the beneficence of the earth in mind, but with their own power in mind. But anyway, please continue.
Well, that brings me to Lee Atwater. If you're not familiar with him, please Google him. Lee Atwater was a master of manipulation, and of course, he died a terrible early death. And if you don't know, Lee Atwater stayed on the cell phone all the time, and he's the one that started the methodology that cell phones called brain cancer, but that's a different story too. But Lee Atwater was the original manipulator for the Republican Party.
Yeah, he's the guy who did the ad to beat, I think it was Dukakis, right, in favor of George W. Bush, talking about how Dukakis had let somebody commuted somebody's sentence or let somebody out on furlough. That person had committed a crime. And that person happened to be black. Put that in an ad, horrified people, scared folks, helped George Bush win, and then when Atwater on his deathbed apologized for it, his apology fell on some deaf ears, but I hope it didn't fall on the deaf ears of the people who realize, let's do good in our lives before it's too late. But please finish your point.
Well, I'm just an old dude, and it seems like you're getting a lot of us. I could go on and on about several different things, being a blue dot right in the middle of red northwest North Carolina, with all the evangelicals and Franklin Graham, but I'll let you go, and I do hope you turn into the icon that Thom Hartmann is. Now, he's got better hair.
It's fair. It's fair. Jeff. He's got terrific hair, and by the time I'm Tom's age, this is going to be shaved. It's going to be great. And what I do want to say though is, do look. I think one of the things we can do, we were talking about the Thanksgiving weekend conversations, a lot of our ideas we're talking about, how do we talk to people we disagree with? I'm also talking about people with whom we might agree with, who we need to engage a little bit more. And that very much includes the next generation. The next generation who, if you were born in the last 20 years, I could imagine you feeling pretty powerless. But the truth of the matter is, in a democracy, they could be very powerful. I actually think Gen Z is our best chance. Right? And talking to our next generation of people, to engage them in democracy, those are fruitful conversations. Those are worth doing. Help bring them up, help educate them, help remind them, help teach them, help encourage them. All right, we'll be back. This is Thom Hartmann Show. I'm Jeff Smith.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
This is the Thom Hartmann Show. Speed round coming up, 202-808-9925. 202-808-9925. What are you grateful for, or what pieces of news do we need to catch? Mary, you're on the air from Seattle, Washington.
Oh, hello, and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I'm grateful that we live in a democracy, and USA is not perfect, but I think we can't find the faults in this country and say, I totally reject it, or, want to tear it down, because it's our blessing. And you can't curse what you're blessed by or what you need. I can't think of another country right now. I'm sure some people can, that I could go to and have everything perfect. And in politics, Minister Al Sharpton said, you're not going to get everything you want in politics, in life. even. Nowhere will you get marriages, anything.
Yep.
You have to work, negotiate, and keep trying. And I thought about that too. So, I'm so thankful that for this country. And when they talk about gratitude, I would like to express that and be more thankful, even for the people. I think Americans, I think we're great people. I mean, we have our problems, but I think all in all, Americans are great people. And then we also have to know that next year at this time, the election will be over. We might not have a democracy anymore if we don't work for it. And some of the successes of past elections, when people won, they got out, they helped people sign up, they encouraged people. And I would like to challenge people to, every family, every group, make a captain of elections to where this person could be responsible for making sure everybody in the family and friends, neighbors are signed up to vote, make sure everybody's got access to a ballot, or are they older, can they get there?
Yeah.
Washington State and other states that have the write-in where you could, I love it. And it's so much easier, but some people even, it's hard for them to get to the post office. So if someone stand up and say,
I'll give you another one. I'll give you another one,
volunteer.
Mary. It's about the next generation point also, right? Is that the vote by mail, it works great, and I'm a strong supporter, but young people tend not to have envelopes or stamps. I know that sounds absurd,
Well,
but
in our
it's
state,
actually
guess
true.
what? Yeah. In our state, we get the envelopes and the stamps are on there. It says no postage necessary.
Yep.
And if people are serious about it, we could even donate a fund to say, hey, this is for putting the postage on the envelope. And so many mailboxes have been taken out because of thefts. So if there's someone, and even pick a co-pilot and say, we're going to make sure everybody in our family, our unit, is signed up, ready to go, and really push it, I think that'll get the Democrats in.
Mary, I totally agree. This was one of the big advantages that the Republicans had during COVID, is they sort of kept doing all their field stuff, kept doing all their organizing stuff, when a bunch of science-believing Democrats stayed inside a little bit. We got to get outside. We got to help people participate.
Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio, and tag you're it. So MAGA Mike and the Republicans want a religious test for people running for public office. They want to know that you are sufficiently Christian to be worthy of being elected. Right. MAGA Mike is one of these 7 mountain evangelicals. There are 7 domains where these dominionists believe that we need to have religion completely take them over. Education, religion, family, business, government and military, arts and entertainment, and the media. Seriously. This is not what Jesus was preaching when he said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. This is the opposite, in fact, of what Jesus was teaching. It's the opposite of Matthew 25, where Jesus said the only way to get to heaven is by feeding the hungry, healing the sick, helping the poor. This is counter-Christian, anti-Christian, in fact. In fact, I think you could say it is the Antichrist's work. There's a piece about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Not really a slogan, I made it up. This is Jeff Smith. It's the Thom Hartmann Show. We're going to keep your calls. A bunch of smart people here. Appreciate y'all. Let's go to Sal from New York, New York. What a place.
Hey, Jeff. How you doing? Happy holidays. Happy Thanksgiving. Calling on that note, like you guys were talking about earlier, with how to handle family members or friends that are Trump supporters. Now, I do something I wish more of us could do it. When speaking to them, instead of saying, like, why do you still like this fascist? Why do you still like this lunatic? They know I'm a liberal Democrat. So I totally take them, I totally disarm them by saying, guys, I love Donald Trump. And then they're like, whoa, we got one. We got a liberal. And then I go, what are you talking about? You love Donald Trump. So you're a liberal. I say, nobody helps the liberals and the Democrats win more. So the question is, why do you like him if he's helping the liberals and the Democrats, which you don't like? And they don't know what to say. What do you think of that?
I think it's an interesting take. I mean, I will say, and this is, I don't say it as a cop-out, it is my genuine strategy. My primary, like anything that doesn't just break relationships or reinforce, like my priorities in those conversations are to only break relationships if I want to break relationships, to not dig into somebody's viewpoint. I don't know if I've told this story on air before. So I watched a guy in my town, all right, he's a rich guy. He built a company that sold bread. Okay, I'll say it, Dave's Killer Bread. And I watched what happened to him. Okay, I watched what happened to him. And he and I have known each other for a while, and he supported some stuff that I've done, and I've appreciated that, still appreciate that. And the only conversation we had about politics, he said, I don't follow politics, I don't care about politics, I don't like politics. Okay, that was that. And sometimes that's a code word for I don't want to share with you how I really feel. I know that. Right. The only thing I'd ever seen him politically do was there was an African American in our town running for judge, and this guy Dave had his name and an endorsement quote emblazoned as the biggest thing on this judicial candidate's website. That was the only political engagement I've ever had with him was knowing me and supporting stuff I did. I guess that's three things: saying he didn't like politics, and third, endorsing this candidate for judge. I watched what happened when he posted something positive about Trump, and everybody came at him, pushing against him, and it radicalized him. He became not only a Trump supporter, he then went to a fundraiser for Mike Pence. Like, he became more of a right-winger because people dug into their viewpoints. The biggest thing I like to do is I like to recruit. I like to try to find people who do care about things, get them to care more, and actually apply that care to stuff. And then make sure the conversations I have where I disagree aren't just disagreeable.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
If you're a corporate
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We take life back!
It's Giving Tuesday. This is kind of a national holiday for nonprofits. Giving Tuesday, the day that that people can step up and select their favorite charity and make a contribution. And so I'd like to ask you to consider making a contribution to Free Speech TV. It is a nonprofit organization. It does great work. You can just call 877-378-8669, or you can go to freespeech.org. We're particularly, trying to sign up people to become monthly donors, to become sustaining members, people who, on a regular basis, every single month, you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they'll just charge it every month, for as long as you say, for a year, or just, until you tell them to stop. And it's a great way to support this network, which is doing great work. I mean, Free Speech TV is just such an incredible gem. And while you're doing that, while you're going to freespeech.org, and while you're calling 877-378-8669 and making your contribution, I wanted to play for you the first roughly 3 minutes of John Kennedy's his inaugural address on January 20th, 1961. Here it is.
We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
That was a time when we very much were committed to the success of liberty in this country. We now have a movement in America, the MAGA movement, that is absolutely opposed to liberty and obsessed with fascism, with violence, with hate, with anger. And here on Free Speech TV, this network that you can contribute to right now on Giving Tuesday, 877-378-8669, right here, we're pushing back. We are holding that torch that John Kennedy handed to us and saying, no, we are the advocates of freedom, the holders of liberty, the supporters of liberty. We are the believers in democracy, and we will fight for democracy, and we will support democracy. And so I'm asking you today on Giving Tuesday to support this great voice of democracy that is Free Speech TV and all the wonderful people who are on this network every single day sharing with you, and working very hard to do it, by the way, sharing with you their thoughts, their opinions, what they've learned, their wisdom, in order to not just edify you, not just to elevate you and inform you and help you win the water cooler wars and all that, but to help us to reclaim that vision of liberty that we seem to have lost since the Reagan Revolution. We kind of gave it up to, well, just let the big corporations and the billionaires run everything and everything will be just fine. We've discovered that promise of Ronald Reagan was a lie, and it just devastated the American people. So today on Giving Tuesday, please call 877-378-8669 or go to Free Speech and become a regular monthly contributor. Thank you so much for watching and for your support.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back, everybody. First of all, I want to say thank you. Doing this gratitude thing, it's a little bit of an experiment. Because I know what an expert would tell me to do. Because I know somebody more somebody more talented than I would probably do. Because I know what most shows do. Because I know what headlines are designed to do, what talk radio has been best at doing, what the internet has turned into high art form in terms of doing. And that is find the negative. Find the fight. Find the controversy. Find the enemy. Work to destroy it. Work to criticize it. That the brain processes a negative thing like 4 times as powerfully as it processes a positive thing, remembers it better. If you want to get somebody engaged, tell them something they disagree with. They learned this in internet engagement. If you really want to get a bunch of engineers to reply, don't tell them a true thing, tell them a false thing. And all the engineers will reply saying, no, that's not right, this is right. The challenge is I think that has short-term benefits and some long-term costs. That doesn't mean we should be Pollyannas and be positive all the time. Heck no. We just got to aim for what we got to aim for. We got to aim for as much truth as we can find. Aim for how we actually get stronger together than we are apart. I understand. But if we fixate on just that, or mostly that, if we fixate mostly on why our enemies are stupid, or why they're in fact enemies, and we're so smart and great. If we fixate on the dumb things or evil things or bad things that have been done, yeah, I know we'll get clicks. I know the calls will light up. I know we'll get listeners. But do we over time get a stronger country? Do we over time get a stronger community? Are we building something to last? Or are we just our own version of Atwater, doing the negative thing that's expedient, knowing it'll work, and then dying before we have to suffer the consequences? Well, we suffer the consequences. And we want those consequences to be good if we don't suffer them. We want the result of our work to be positive. We are here not only for infotainment and not just for collective rage. Hopefully we are here to build a community together, a community that will radiate, to make democracy a little stronger, to demonstrate an example of not what people can be, because none of us is perfect. I'm working to love myself. It takes some work. But we can love one another. We can try to model a little bit. We won't do it perfectly, but model at least a little bit. At least like once a year around Thanksgiving. What we wish the world were a little more like. So this gratitude thing is a little bit of an experiment. And I appreciate everybody who's engaged in the experiment. If you got other stuff you need to talk about, including grumpiness, that's totally cool. If you got news we should cover, heck, it's Tuesday News Day, things that we're missing. We talked a little bit about the Colorado case. I should point out one other case, big case. We'll talk more about it next week. Circuit Court, not yet the Supreme Court. I say yet out of concern and skepticism and fear. Has ruled the Voting Rights Act can only be, a case under the Voting Rights Act can only be prosecuted by, can only be brought by, a civil action can only be brought by the Department of Justice itself, rather than private parties. I think of the 180 or so cases brought under that section of the Voting Rights Act, I think 18 of them happened only by the Department of Justice itself. Others had joined parties or other parties started it. Or other parties were alone without the Department of Justice. It's a big case. I want to dodge it, want to let people know about it. It's a bad, bad deal. Should follow it. It is part of the effort to destroy the Voting Rights Act, part of the ongoing war on democracy. I am not grateful for that. I will not pretend to be. We need to cover the hard stuff too. And the concern, of course, is that what if it is the Department of Justice itself? What if it is the administration itself or the administration's party that is in fact undermining the Voting Rights Act? What if it in fact it was, I don't know, let's say hypothetically a president like Donald Trump and his Department of Justice, or somebody like John Ashcroft, who decided to go after a person's right to vote, and then said, well, we don't really want our Department of Justice to file an action. Under this absurd ruling, there would be no action. It is absurd. We should cover it. There might be other absurd things you want to make sure we do cover before the end of the show, or also next week. I'll be back. An honor to be with you. But I genuinely appreciate, oh, by the way, it's 11:11 my time. I'm going to kiss the clock for luck and make a wish. That I genuinely appreciate your appreciation, your expressions of gratitude, particularly those that are constructive and might help inspire somebody else to engage, to figure out the conversations they want to have at their Thanksgiving table. Their expression of gratitude might be for Social Security. Their expression of gratitude might be the nature still exists. It might be for Medicare, Medicaid. It might be for Obamacare. It might be the I know, politically well-named, historically oddly named Inflation Reduction Act, which includes in it the ability to negotiate for Medicare drug prices, which will help lower drug prices. And something politicians have been talking about for decades finally happened thanks to this president and this Democratic side of this previous Congress. There might be ways to express gratitude that help also recruit a pro-democracy movement. When I'm talking about these Thanksgiving Day conversations, I'm not merely trying to find conversions. I am humble in our ability to find conversions. But I think we are a little soft on our ability to recruit allies to democracy. I think we can do that. I think we can call our better selves to be our better selves. That's what friends of the good do. This is what Aristotle had to say about it, right? Aristotle says there's three kinds of friends. There are friends of pleasure, there are friends of mutual benefit, and they're friends of the good. Friends of pleasure, people you like to have a beer with, go to a ball game with. Friends of mutual benefit, people you'll trade, I don't know, no-bid contracts. And friends of the good, people who are united around a shared set of values, or at least a shared value, a shared virtue, shared purpose. And that kind of friendship is the highest form of friendship. It is also, I believe, the only chance humanity has. Left to my own devices, I am a scoundrel. Left to my own devices, I do not live up to what I think a human should be. I am at my better and grading on a curve at my best when I'm surrounded by people better than I am. It's one of the reasons I like doing this show. I learn something every time. I'm surrounded by people who during this time are trying to figure out how we can work together, how we can be better. We can do that during Thanksgiving. We can call our families and our friends and heck strangers to be our better selves, not because we are so great, but because we're not. And in fellowship, we'll find improvement. How can we together be better than we are apart? I don't just mean because we can lift a bigger stone. I mean, actually, how can we lift each other's souls? How can we enrich each other's minds, one another's minds? It's plural. Anyhow, I appreciate y'all. Let's go to Carol. Is it Madison, Pennsylvania?
Hi, Jefferson.
Hello, Carol.
We're going to be lucky enough to have you next week as well.
Lucky or unlucky, apparently that's how it's going.
Oh, everything's good here. Well, actually, not great, but I'm living through some bad pain that I've got to deal with. But I'm doing the best I can. I want to say, first of all, that I think the two worst presidents don't have enough time to judge the impact of his 4 pseudo-presidency years. So I'm going to go with George W. Bush because of the cost of those wars, and Ronald Reagan for practically ripping apart the middle class. Those would be the two I would choose for the worst.
I hear you. Do you have a least worst or a couple of least worst?
Pardon me?
Do you have a least worst or a couple of least worst?
Well,
you can call them best, but you know.
The one I like the most isn't in my lifetime, and that would be FDR.
Yeah.
But there have been a few good ones. I like Joe Biden, frankly.
Is it?
And this
listen
is a
to the tone
man
of voice.
I did not like.
No, exactly. Listen to the tone of voice. You said it. This is what I find so interesting. It might be a small point, but to me, it's a big point. It's like, actually, what I think about it, I like Joe Biden. This is actually what I think. I think you are exactly like a lot of people in the country.
Well, that's good to hear, because really, he hasn't been given credit for all that he has done. And he's in the midst of a lot of adversity from the right. And yet he's still got a lot done, I think.
Yeah, a kind of a remarkable amount. Carol, it's wonderful to hear your voice. Thank you for calling. I hope the
But that
pain
isn't
fights
actually why I called.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll be brief. I called about gratitude.
Yeah.
I am extremely grateful to be married to the most wonderful man I ever knew for 45 years. And we still love each other even more now than we did 45 years ago.
Oh, it's wonderful. Oh, it's wonderful. Give him our love.
I will.
All right.
Thank you.
You be well.
Bye-bye.
Let's go to Richard from California.
Well, hello there, Jeff Smith. My two are the best president and first lady, Carter and Rosalynn, because after his presidency, he went around and he him and her got an entourage, and they went to these different
developing nations, poorer countries, yeah.
Helped their voting, yeah, and he made sure that their votes were counted and all was, worked for them. And don't we need that now? Yep. And the other thing is that Lou, what's his face? Lou, I can't remember his last name right now, but he started KPFA in Berkeley, California in 1949. And I say that if it weren't for that, that ties us to the First Amendment from 200 years ago, and that's really what is going to have us survive as a nation, bringing our framers, brilliant guys, to what we're doing today, which is mass communication around the world with liberty, and free speech is incredible.
Yeah.
It's really what's going to make it work for all of us.
Lewis Hill, I think, is you're talking about. And yeah, I do want to shout that out and elevate that, Richard, and appreciate your call, and happy Thanksgiving to you. That building media communities, and I really mean building communities, but that could be in person, but it can also be sort of digitally, building communities, friends of the good writ large. I think it's, if not our only hope, it's certainly our best. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Call-in number is 202-808-9925. 202-808-9925. Pearson from Lamarck, Texas. You are on the air. Oh, maybe you're not. Let's go for Tom from Bennington, Vermont. You're on the air.
Thank you, Jeff, and I'm a big fan of Dr. Tom's. Anyway, I'm very grateful for Rosalynn Carter, like the rest of us. She helped disease in the Congo. She was first lady at the military briefings and the cabinet meetings. And then Jimmy, he loved the post office because he said, I saw him say it was the safest type of communications, and it made sense. And that goes right along with cursive writing. They're not teaching that anymore.
Can I dwell on the post office for a moment? Can I give you my favorite post office fact? So, all right.
Yes.
So It's my favorite post office fact. I'm a big fan of the post office. It's a miracle. The post office, the more the internet should have been run through the post office, we'd have internet service that matched that of other rich nations. But setting that aside for a moment, a friend of a friend worked for the USGA, U.S. Gemological Society, USGMS, whatever, or USGMA anyway. The folks who rate and review precious gemstones, diamonds, rubies, etc. Right?
Yes.
And they asked, what kind of mail did they use? They could use anything, right? If you're mailing a diamond, you're not worried about paying a bunch of money on postage. And the way they mailed their gems was in plain paper U.S. Postal Service mail. They used DHL. They didn't use tracking. That was the most reliable. And that's what they used. And it made me realize, every time somebody said something was lost in the mail, it's because they didn't mail it, right? That wasn't the post office's fault. That was the shipper's fault. But anyway, go on. Continue your point.
Okay, well, these have banking a little bit in the post offices, but I'm going to get the cursive writing.
Oh, amen, amen. Yes, that's another.
Not
getting
taught anymore.
Getting baking.
Maybe, maybe because computers won't be able to read it.
Yeah.
So, AI and all that stuff.
Yep.
Also want to mention Barack Obama. What was it with him? I said, he wanted to, he should just give back the Peace Prize. He was bombing Yemen at the time, And here's one for you, Pamela Harris and Hakeem Jeffries for vice president.
So you think Kamala is our next candidate?
Well, I just want to hear some talk about her. Usually at this time of elections, you always hear about the vice president.
Yeah.
And they're silent on her, and she's been very active.
No, there was a move made on Kamala that and it happened early, and I watched it. Right after the election, before Biden was sworn in. It was, in fact. Was it even before the election? It was before the election because it was Halloween. It was like October 30th, right before that November election. And a conservative friend of mine texted me a political cartoon. And it showed a trick-or-treater in a dress with a Joe Biden mask. And then you take off the Joe Biden mask, and it was a caricatured, racist drawing of Kamala Harris.
Let me mention high-speed trains you talked about.
They've weaponized. They have weaponized. And thank you so much for calling, Tom. Appreciate it. They have weaponized sexism and racism against Kamala since before she had a chance to become beloved. We'll be back.
Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. One of the grand questions that political scientists have been scratching their heads over for years in America is, why do right-wing billionaires fund anti-black history movements? Why are they pouring money into these people? Why are they funding anti-trans movements? I mean, what does this have to do with being a billionaire? Well, it turns out it has a lot to do with it, and here's why. Almost 30 million Americans lack health insurance. 37 million of us live in dire poverty. 1 in 5 of us are illiterate. A quarter of Americans suffer from a diagnosable mental illness and can't get treatment. 316 people are shot every day in America. 44% of us carry student debt. And the billionaires don't want to pay income taxes to deal with any of these problems of society. That's the real issue. If they can get us fighting with each other over black history or over trans people or kids, they win. Then we're not talking about taxing them, raising their taxes to where they should be. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com that you can read and see all the stats and all the hot links. Check it out.
Welcome to the program. Let's talk to the wonderful people who are calling in. Let's try Pearson again from Lamarck, Texas, wins the Most Patient Listener Award. Go ahead, Pearson.
Yeah, I heard you before.
loud and clear, just like I do right now.
Great.
Anyway, so do you remember, I don't recall if it was right after he came down the escalator with all those paid cheerleaders at $50 a pop, or if it was the following year, that one of his rallies, maybe in North Carolina or in Kentucky, a black man was leaving the stadium and some white dude in a ponytail and cowboy hat beat the black guy up. That was the same rally, I believe, that some young teenage females stood toe-to-toe with Trump supporters on the floor of the convention space. Do you remember that?
Roughly. My memory is hazy, and you're refreshing it.
So I'm grateful to the young people back then and who are not so young people now, who are still alive, who are still representing where representing needs to be done, like those even younger people with the one of the environmental movements who showed up at Dianne Feinstein's office, who were disrespected by her, made me very angry. I admire these young people. I respect them, and our future is hinged on the actions of these young people. So I would chide any of my fellow boomers from disrespecting them in any way possible, to be respectful and be grateful and back them up.
Okay, I want to make sure I get the direction of the respect you're advising right. Who do you want to make sure is respecting whom?
I want to be sure that my fellow boomers, when they go on YouTube and such, and they talk condescendingly about these young people, these Gen Y and Z, who do music covers of the Beatles and Tull and all the rock groups of the 60s and 70s, and they are half complimentary and half condescending. And I get so irritated when I read these posts, so I gently correct them.
Amen.
Telling my fellow boomers.
No, what a great note. What a great note. Let's spend our time, right? I'm Gen X, but let's spend our time lifting up the next generation. Let's spend time encouraging them, particularly encouraging them when they're doing the right thing. That the Stan Van Gundy, who's basketball coach, I was a low-level basketball coach years ago, and Stan Van Gundy got training from a Stanford management coach. And they said, do I need to praise more? He said, no, don't praise more. You got to praise for the right stuff. Praise for the conduct that you're trying to encourage, the conduct you're trying to make more. When we see that, let's encourage young people. Let's lift them up. Let's elevate them. Let's make heroes of them when they deserve it.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
This is the Thom Hartmann Show, 202-808-9925. I'm Jeff. Grateful to be here.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey there, it's Giving Tuesday. This is kind of a national holiday for nonprofits. Giving Tuesday, the day that people can step up and select their favorite charity and make a contribution. And so I'd like to ask you to consider making a contribution to Free Speech TV. It is a nonprofit organization. It does great work. You can just call 877-378-8669, or you can go to freespeech.org. We're particularly, trying to sign up people to become monthly donors, to become sustaining members, people who, on a regular basis, every single month, you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they'll just charge it every month, for as long as you say, for a year, or just, until you tell them to stop. And it's a great way to support this network, which is doing great work. I mean, Free Speech TV is just such an incredible gem. And while you're doing that, while you're going to freespeech.org and while you're calling 877-378-8669 and making your contribution, I wanted to play for you the first roughly 3 minutes of John Kennedy's his inaugural address on January 20th, 1961. Here it is.
We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now. For man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
That was a time
We observe today
when we very much were committed to the success of liberty in this country. We now have a movement in America, you know, the MAGA movement, that is absolutely opposed to liberty and obsessed with fascism, with violence, with hate, with anger. And here on Free Speech TV, this network that you can contribute to right now on Giving Tuesday, 877-378-8669, right here, we're pushing back. We are holding that torch that John Kennedy handed to us and saying, no, we are the advocates of freedom, the holders of liberty, the supporters of liberty. We are the believers in democracy, and we will fight for democracy, and we will support democracy. And so I'm asking you today on Giving Tuesday to support this great voice of democracy that is Free Speech TV and all the wonderful people who are on this network every single day, sharing with you, and working very hard to do it, by the way, sharing with you their thoughts, their opinions, what they've learned, their wisdom, in order to not just edify you, not just to elevate you and inform you and help you win the water cooler wars and all that, but to help us to reclaim that vision of liberty that we seem to have lost since the Reagan Revolution. We kind of gave it up to, well, just let the big corporations and the billionaires run everything and everything will be just fine. We've discovered that promise of Ronald Reagan was a lie, and it just devastated the American people. So today on Giving Tuesday, please call 877-378-8669 or go to Free Speech and become a regular monthly contributor. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. From international trade policy to immigration policy to housing, we've got all kinds of topics. The wars between Republicans and Democrats, the Republican efforts to induce fascism in the United States. A great selection of opinions will be found over at HartmannReport.com. So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody is covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out.
All right, let's get to it. Let's go first to Fred. You're on the air from Altamont Springs, Florida.
Good day, Jeff. Good talking to you. And I'd like to talk a little bit. First, I'd like to have a shout out to the other laborer who was on earlier. I'm also a retired laborer.
There you go.
41 years. And I thank the union for the fact that I am retired. But the reason why I was calling up is be grateful. Something we all take for granted here is in most parts of the United States, we got clean water, something we can go drink. Yeah. And then you look at countries like Africa that the Carters went out there and almost eradicated one of the worst parasites known to man, which is guinea worm. Look it up on Google and see how terrible that thing is and how so many people, millions of people suffered. And now they're down to like 20 cases a year, which is that itself is enough to make them all saints.
Was it guinea worm?
Yes. It sounds funny. People kind of take. Actually, Rachel Maddow did a short shout out about it on one of her shows.
Yeah.
But it's called guinea worm, which sounds, what's that? You know, some Italian worm? But no, it's actually a terrible parasite.
Yeah.
It usually kill you, but it's extremely painful.
Yeah, the worm was actually Dutch. No, it wasn't. I have no idea what nationality the worm was. Saw no boundaries.
Okay. But anyway, yeah, so I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and I'm sitting outside in a beautiful day today. So thanks, Jeff.
It's a nice time to be in Florida. All right, Fred. John from San Francisco.
Oh, hi, Jeff.
What's the weather like in San Francisco right now? I know I could have looked it up online, but I didn't.
No. Yeah, I'd be Thanksgiving to President LBJ, Lyndon Johnson.
Okay.
And, he created the Great Society and certain social programs such as Medicare. I think this was a brainchild of President Kennedy, God bless him. And, he also, two of my favorite presidents, and he tried to curb racism. I believe it was so much more prevalent in the South at the time when he was president, and today it's not so much. And also, as I said before, he LBJ, that is now, he put that made that not a law, but it was a provision of Medicare for
No, John. No, like the Great Society. Thank you so much for the call. The Great Society plus Civil Rights Act. My old political science professor Jim Klonowski said that but for the Vietnam War, he would have been viewed as one of the very greatest presidents of all time. And it's one of the reasons I do my sort of worst to least worst rather than best, because every president has not only made mistakes but has exercised power in ways that a moralist would describe as immoral. Right? And because to some degree, that's what power does, right? The wielding of power has costs. I'm not here to apologize for it or even promote it. But instead of saying, which president do I love the most? Because maybe no president is worthy of our love. Maybe they all are. I don't know. But if we grade on a curve, if we grade on, well, what do we actually get? If I go past 50 years, you get a lot of people, including people who protested LBJ over the Vietnam War, some of them end up with LBJ at the top of their list. And I'm not here to impose the list, right? I have my own thoughts, but I do find the exercise interesting and appreciate your shout out. Mark from Seattle, Washington, you're on the air.
Hey, Jeff. Appreciate what you're doing and how well you do it. I'm calling about, well, first I want to say about the worst president, in my opinion, Ronald Reagan. Kind of laid the groundwork for where we are with Trump, and he was the first installment of what you referred to earlier, I think, of that, what Hillary called the great right-wing conspiracy. It's been manipulated, buying up media, creating these think tanks. David Brock has a book that's years old now called The Republican Noise Machine that really documents how that's been accomplished. But Reagan creating that distrust in government, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help, is like the worst thing you can hear. There's just a list of things that he did that I think make him my worst president. I'm grateful for.
Well, let me dwell on that. Let me dwell on that for a moment. No, I think I've heard pretty compelling arguments for Reagan, for Trump, the arguments for Reagan as worst include sort of a helping to form the modern right wing, as well as, I mean, if you're using the Robeson rubric sort of lens of who stood up for democracy versus who undercut it, like the Iran-Contra was a big deal. Like, that was actually a big deal. And his performance on the stand, if I can call it that, was remarkable, and I don't mean that as a compliment. The argument for Nixon, I don't think the argument for Nixon is just Vietnam. It's that a lot of that stuff, the guys who, I won't use the word on the radio, but it's rat F, right? The rat effers that would go out and that built much of the strategic base for the modern right wing, the people who sort of set aside, kind of liberal ideas. And by that, I don't mean Social Security, Medicare, and women's right to choose. By that, I mean the basic idea that people are supposed to live based on reason rather than just the manifestation of power. They sort of undercut that and said, no, power is its only thing. So that's sort of one of the arguments for Nixon. But go on, make your other point.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that kind of segues into my point, which is, they've done that. One of the biggest tools in doing that is how they frame things, phrases like the nanny state and defund the police and smoke screens that put Democrats in a box and find middle-of-the-road Democrats, even progressive Democrats, defending things that really it pulls us away from the communication we need to be making.
Oh, it's so important.
George Lakoff, the whole idea of framing.
Sure.
And so specifically, I wanted to get to something that is current right now, which is a smokescreen, I think. This idea of corporate income tax is a big buzzword, and I think Democrats take a lot of heat for that. And I personally, I don't think corporate income tax has a lot of political value or economic value compared to just taxing the earners, that indexed income tax like the Eisenhower administration. Because corporate income tax doesn't really hit the people so much at the top as it hits across the board. It makes us less competitive, workers. There's so many people involved in corporate profit. So why not just level our sights on income and passive income, earned income, and get those indexes up. And income tax is kind of like the smoking, no, not smoking thing. Best example, I think, would be term limits versus finance reform. You know? And everybody got term limits, and smokescreen for what really should have happened was campaign finance reform. And of course, we got stuck in the mud.
And that was a move, right? It was a move to try to pretend to improve democracy while distracting what was really going on, which is the auctioning off of our democracy and of political power. And the argument, in fact, who was the old bandmate of Richard Springsteen, who then was in the Sopranos TV show? Who his argument, well argued, is that Buckley versus Valeo was the worst modern Supreme Court opinion, and the one that's been most impactful before Citizens United, begat Citizens United in some respects, and it was a big deal. I'll take the bait on your question a little bit. That in this country we tax at transfer, right? We tend to, right? Whether it's sales tax, whether it's the estate tax, or whether it's the income tax. The Elizabeth Warren idea was, instead of just taxing at transfer, what if we tax pooled resources? The argument for that, and there's pros and cons. The arguments for that are that most, and something to consider. And I'm not a tax hawk, to be clear, but the But the challenge with just taxing at income is that most wealth isn't income, right? Like the biggest pots of money, the biggest power economic power that's wielded isn't because of the salary that Warren Buffett doesn't pay himself, because he doesn't pay himself very much. It's based on ownership. If you don't tax anything on ownership, and if you just rely on income, then you are favoring the ownership class, right, and disfavoring the labor class, the working class. So that's the argument, and people can make their own judgments. But Mark, any last word? Otherwise, go to the next caller.
Well, I hear you on that, and I would just say ownership and transfer are concepts, and I agree with that. But it's I'm getting lost here. So.
No worries. I hear your main point. Your main point that if we tax human beings rather than just the corporate form, that has some advantages, and there's pros and cons, and I appreciate the point. Most of all, happy Thanksgiving. You be well.
Right, to you too.
Be well. Aileen from Salem, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you?
Aileen, it's been an age. How are you?
Pretty good. Well, it's great to have you on. And anyway, what I want to say is since Ron Klain left the Biden administration, nobody is doing PR for him.
Interesting.
There should be a list of all the great things Biden has done. It should be a written list, a la Ross Perot, and it should be just circulated everywhere. It should be every time somebody goes on TV on a talk show, they should have the list to hold up. And a good example is the low unemployment rate that nobody even knows.
Yep.
And I don't know why Ron Klain left. And
it's
I wish
a tiring
he would
job.
come back. Well, this is an emergency now because we're facing a possible dictatorship. So
yeah, no, I agree about the importance. There is, in fact, I know it because I looked it up last night. If you go to whitehouse.gov/therecord, it's whitehouse.gov/therecord, you can get a list of top accomplishments. I agree that it isn't, and I will say, I mean, part of the challenge we have in the media is there's an enormous amount of right-wing media. And then you have the legacy media, and the right-wing media will attack the Democratic president and laud the Republican president. Then you have legacy media, and legacy media will attack the Republican president and attack the Democratic president. And then you have a little bit of explicitly sort of progressive and pro-democracy media, and much of that will attack power, right? So it will look for the ways that power is doing ill, and power always will. That is not a defense of it. It is just my understanding of the universe. And it has made it very hard in the modern era, I think, for a liberal president to be popular. I think that's part of the problem. But getting it's hard for any president to be popular in the current era, but I think the structural defects, it's like Trump is unpopular, I think, on the merits. I think Biden is unpopular, not merely on the merits. And one of the things I agree with you on is, sharing actually, what's the state of affairs? Not just the thing we're grumpy about, but what are some of the actual state of affairs? I think that's worth sharing.
Yep. Well, we need to make our list. I'll look on the website and start making the list.
Aileen, you're the best. It's great to hear from you. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be right back. Brandon from North Little Rock, Arkansas, not to be confused with those scoundrels from South Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for being a friend for good.
Likewise.
I wanted to talk about conversating with others with, different political views.
Yeah.
In my circle of people I deal with, I don't necessarily have Trumpers, so to speak, or if so, they haven't really made themselves known. I've actually been dealing with people who are quote unquote progressive to a fault, like so far progressive that they're becoming anti-democratic.
Yep.
Or at least anti-democratic party.
Yep.
And honestly, I mean, this is what's like keeping me up at night.
Yep.
I know, Trumpers, there's no change in their mind. There's no, it's like what you were talking about earlier. I'd rather talk to a table.
Yep.
Because we're not changing their point of view whatsoever. That's fine. I'll leave them where they lay. These friends of mine, or even just, people I deal with, work with, whatever, is driving me nuts because every time we get into the slightest political conversation, all their talking points are against the Democratic.
I hear you. Let's dwell on this for a moment. Brandon. This is a big deal. Sure. Okay, so I have my dear friend Tim. All right. So in the studio now is a friend named Jeremy I haven't seen for a long time, and one friend we have in common is named Tim. And Tim was a remarkable guy. He actually grew up homeless. And talk about bootstraps, he had to find himself some straps and some, I don't know, whatever he made the boots out of, but he had to start from worse than scratch, right? And he is now finishing a PhD in Europe, okay, living in France with his wife from France. And he's a lefty, okay, he's left of left. Mm-hmm. And we have an ongoing political conversation. It's been about 11 years. And the essence of that conversation is pretty close to where you've said. And he's smart, wonderful, loving. He's a better person than I am in most respects. And I think I've been heard. Okay, I think I've been heard. What I've been heard about is this: what I noticed was most of his emotional ire has been directed at, let's say, the Clintons, right? Mm-hmm. He would call them the Clinton Easter. Mm-hmm. There's so much anger at the Clintons, right? And then he'd be mad at Obama for a sin from Obama, and I wouldn't immediately pivot to whataboutism, but over this 11 years worth of conversations, I've come to have a view, and I think it feels like betrayal. I think that's the problem. That when somebody that you think is on your side, when somebody you think is a friend of yours, when somebody you think is potentially an ally, steals from you, takes from you, does something wrong to you, you feel it more deeply, much more deeply when an enemy does it. It feels more deeply when a stranger does it. I think the thing we have to deal with is that when somebody from the center left does something that is imperfect, when power is wielded in a way that can be described as a sin, that feels more hurtful. But as a policymaker, even a sociologist, certainly as a political advocate, definitely as a political strategist, it seems like the ire should be focused on those who don't disagree with us 20% of the time, but who disagree with us 80% of the time. And we've got to govern our emotions rather than our emotions governing us.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So why is it that Republicans insist on calling Democrats communists? I mean, this is all over the place. Donald Trump recently said, we're going to deny entry all communists and Marxists. Now, the real problem is, what do we do about the ones we already have who happen to be politicians? Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, Shifty Schiff. Ted Cruz told Fox News, Joe Biden has handed the agenda over to the socialists. And not just the socialists, this is now the communists. Today's Democratic Party believes in violence. They believe in mob rule, just like the communists and Marxists. And he goes on. Ron DeSantis, same thing. You see at a college campus, students flying the hammer and sickle from the old Soviet Union flag. There are no communists left in America of any consequence. There's certainly not a single elected communist. But we do have a really serious fascism problem in America. I wrote about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, Why American Fascists Label All Who Oppose Them as Communists. Check it out.
So, wanted to give our last caller a chance to finish up, but we had during the break an insightful comment, and that was, well, the challenge I'm having is not trying to win over Trump folks. My challenge is the people who are sort of the left of left, who can brook no compromise, who see sin and call it out and are unwilling to put up with it, and have righteous indignation and virtuously based arguments to back it up. And I, without going back into it, I described a dear friend of mine. We've had sort of an ongoing conversation about that. And what dawned on me is the feeling when an ally harms you is not just a feeling of disagreement or, oh yeah, that person is somebody I don't like. It's a feeling of betrayal, and it lasts longer and it hits harder. We've got to build our friendships. We've got to expand our network of friendships. We've got to focus on not just enlarging not merely converting our enemies, although we should try to love as many people as we possibly can, but to make sure we build our friends of the good. Not only our friends of pleasure, not only our friends of mutual benefit, but our collection of people who are united and organized around some common purpose. I like to focus on the common purpose of democracy itself, because I know that there isn't a human being on earth who agrees with me 100% of the time. Well, actually, there is exactly one human being on earth who agrees with me 100% of the time. And he's wearing my pants. Not because he's out there like wearing my pants and I don't have any pants on. It's me. And so what I can find agreement with, and what we have to find and have to build a 60% coalition around, is the idea that democracy itself matters. The idea that, in fact, we are stronger together than we are apart, that matters. That we're going to work together to figure things out, that matters. And I'm very grateful for that. This Thanksgiving season, I am grateful for that. And I'm grateful for you, the coalition of the benevolently irrational, the good people doing good things for no good reason, the friends of the good, who are priceless. Definition of priceless, worth a lot, not for sale. Much love, y'all. Have a happy Thanksgiving. I'll be back with you on Monday.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
Hey there, it's Giving Tuesday. This is kind of a national holiday for nonprofits. Giving Tuesday, the day that people can step up and select their favorite charity and make a contribution. And so I'd like to ask you to consider making a contribution to Free Speech TV. It is a nonprofit organization. It does great work. You can just call 877-378-8669, or you can go to freespeech.org. We're particularly, trying to sign up people to become monthly donors, to become sustaining members, people who, on a regular basis, every single month, you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they'll just charge it every month, for as long as you say, for a year, or just, until you tell them to stop. And it's a great way to support this network, which is doing great work. I mean, Free Speech TV is just such an incredible gem. And while you're doing that, while you're going to freespeech.org, and while you're calling 877-378-8669 and making your contribution, I wanted to play for you the first roughly 3 minutes of John Kennedy's his inaugural address on January 20th, 1961. Here it is.
We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
That was a time
We observe today
when we very much were committed to the success of liberty in this country. We now have a movement in America, you know, the MAGA movement, that is absolutely opposed to liberty and obsessed with fascism, with violence, with hate, with anger. And here on Free Speech TV, this network that you can contribute to right now on Giving Tuesday, 877-378-8669, right here, we're pushing back. We are holding that torch that John Kennedy handed to us and saying, no, we are the advocates of freedom, the holders of liberty, the supporters of liberty. We are the believers in democracy, and we will fight for democracy, and we will support democracy. And so I'm asking you today on Giving Tuesday to support this great voice of democracy that is Free Speech TV and all the wonderful people who are on this network every single day, sharing with you, and working very hard to do it, by the way, sharing with you their thoughts, their opinions, what they've learned, their wisdom, in order to not just edify you, not just to elevate you and inform you and help you win the water cooler wars and all that, but to help us to reclaim that vision of liberty that we seem to have lost since the Reagan Revolution. We kind of gave it up to, well, just let the big corporations and the billionaires run everything and everything will be just fine. We've discovered that promise of Ronald Reagan was a lie, and it just devastated the American people. So today on Giving Tuesday, please call 877-378-8669 or go to Free Speech and become a regular monthly contributor. Thank you so much for watching and for your support.